Let me share the warrant.
Article 2 and 3.
Yes. So Article 2 is an article to put money into cover separation expenses, and I would recommend no action on this and wait to the fall for this.
Okay, do you want to share your screen of those separation expenses so everyone can see that? Did you sent that to us, right?
I did not.
You didn't?
Okay. So right now, we're reviewing what any separation expenses are that we might have and how much money is left that was previously approved. So the town accountant will be going through all that. Right now, a lot of people, when they retire, they don't get paid out all at once. It's 2, sometimes 3 years before they're paid out. We spread it out. So James will be reviewing all that, and then we'll come back in the fall.
Okay. Just for reference point, was this funded last spring and how much?
I don't know how much was funded last spring. I think James said in articles over the previous years, there's about $1 million in that account right now. Okay. And the liability is about 2.5, I believe, overall. Like OPEB, everyone's not going to retire at the same time, but.
All right, does anyone have any questions or discussion before we vote no action?
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Is that 2.5, Mike, just town employees, or does that include school employees?
Just town employees.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, Cody.
Mike, do we know how much was it originally that you're looking for that we're taking down to fall?
I don't have anything on that. I don't believe I have anything at home with that. No, I don't. I don't know if James is on and he would remember, but.
This is separate from OPEB.
You can send that.
Yeah, OPEB just covers health insurance. This covers any earned vacation or sick leave buyback.
Madam Chair?
Yes, James.
There is an upcoming retirement of the police department. I believe that was what the funds were being asked for.
Anyone else have questions or discussion? And hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion to
No action.
recommend no action.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Joe.
I make a motion that we recommend no action on Article 2 of the special town meeting warrant.
Second?
Kevin, you here yet? Oh, okay, Steve?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Cody?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Bonnie, have you come on yet?
She was on at 7:01.
Okay.
Yeah, I put it in the chat.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry, I didn't see that. Bonnie, are you voting?
I said yes.
Okay, sorry. 2 yes. 10 yes, for Article 2 to recommend no action.
Okay. Next article is Article 3, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer funds to supplement the FY24 budget. And we have an option with this. These are the amounts right now. Town clerk was short $1,200 in her salary account, as well as recreation was short $600. We have the snow removal, probably one of the lowest in years, $8,749, and the police department education assistance $22,900. We could move this article and use funds from free cash, or we would be able to do this with end of year transfers, if so, whichever the committee would prefer to do.
Okay, thoughts, discussion on this one?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes, Steve.
Mike, just a couple of questions, right? How do we get the town clerk's salary incorrect? I get the educational expenses, that can happen, right? We get a budget for it. And then recreation. How do we get the salary accounts incorrect during the budget season? Is it approved, is it increased hours? Or something else that's happening here?
It's not increased hours, I don't believe. When the budget was done, it took into account that one of the staff people was moving up a step.
And then do we make sure that, I'll call it that miss, was it
Yes.
updated for this current budget?
We did.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Cody.
Mike, I can't recall, I'm having trouble finding last year's, budget. How much was in snow removal for last year? Or the current year?
How much was in the budget?
Yeah,
80,000.
okay,
Every year we do 80,000.
okay. Thank you.
Does anyone have any thoughts about transferring the money from free cash now? What was the other option, Mike? We wait till the fall again for this?
No, the other option would be at the end of this current fiscal year when we do year-end transfers. We could cover this with year-end transfers or your reserve fund.
Madam Chair. I think we've got, what, like 142,000 in the reserve fund currently?
We started with 150. You did about 33,000. Another 8. I think you used 42,000 of the 150, if I'm correct.
Can I make a recommendation that we just use that instead of? I mean, it doesn't make a difference using that versus free cash transfers. I mean, it all ends up in the same place, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Some thoughts about that, using reserve fund? For these supplements?
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Zach.
I would just use the FinCom reserve. One less thing you would have to read off at town meeting.
Oh, thanks for thinking of me, Zach.
So then, on this article, do no action, and then we'll come back with a reserve fund transfer request later.
Okay. Any other questions or comments before I entertain a motion to recommend no action?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Joe.
I make a motion that we recommend no action on Article 3 of the special town meeting warrant.
Second?
Steve?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Yes. Joe? Sorry, Joe, I didn't hear you.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Bill?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Cody?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Kevin, did you hear the discussion? Do you want to vote on this? I just saw you joined.
I'll abstain because I just topped on.
Okay, sounds good. And I am a yes, 8 yes, 10 yes, 1 abstain.
Thank you. Do you want to do another article on the annual? You have 5 minutes.
Ooh, that's what it is, I guess.
Um,
I'm done in 5 minutes.
Choose wisely.
What I was going to suggest is the petition article, the zoning bylaw amendment. The planning board did not recommend that article.
Which number
So,
was this, Mike?
yeah, I'll call it up.
The 19?
The
Or
lights.
18? The lights, the 18.
It's one,
Yeah, Article 19.
Article 19. This was the camera?
This is the lighting.
The light.
And this went before the planning board, and they did not recommend that this be approved.
Can you explain why? Did they give an explanation?
Is Paul on? Thought he'd be on. What this was proposing to do was to take out in the planning board rules and regulations right now, when it comes to regulating light, there is a section that excludes single and 2 family residential dwellings. And so what she wanted to do was strike that so that single family and 2 family dwellings would be subject to the bylaw. And, the feeling was that it's just not something that they want to amend the bylaw right now. Maybe if she came back and proposed a section to be added into the bylaw for regulations on single and 2 family homes. But the section we have right now is more or less to regulate commercial lighting. And so they didn't feel it was applicable.
Okay. Anyone comments or questions about? Yes, Cody.
no, just, I watched that meeting. I think, the planning board basically said if they did that, they'd have to go, like, everyone who wanted to put a light on their garage or, on their house would end up having to go before the planning board or the zoning board to seek an exception.
Anyone have questions or comments about this one?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Joe.
I know we have to do this in the affirmative, so I make a motion that we recommend Article 19 of the annual town meeting warrant.
Second?
Kevin?
No.
Steve?
No.
Tracy?
No.
Sandy?
No.
Joe?
No.
Bill?
No.
Paul?
No.
Cody?
No,
Zach?
No.
Bonnie?
No.
No for Article 19. Okay, 7:15, the chair would entertain a motion to open the public hearing of the Finance Committee.
So moved.
Second. Sorry, I'm off my game.
No problem. I'll take a roll call to open the public hearing. Kevin?
Here.
Steve?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yeah.
Yes. Joe?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Cody?
yes,
Zach?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
I too am a yes. public hearing is open. All right, Mike, so do we want to share the 1% budget since that's all that the finance committee has gone over at this point?
And while I'm getting that, I'll just mention again that the reason we're looking at a 1% budget is if you look at our increment is $1,141,693. And so the increment, if there's anyone on that doesn't understand, is what we're allowed to increase revenue under Prop 2.5. And then if you take just our increases that we have in health insurance, retirement, expense to Bristol County, our increase in our assessment for our regional dispatch, and the increase in our other insurances, that's $779,558, which leaves us with $362,135 for the entire budget. And we are using $1.2 million of free cash again, so that we can have a 1% budget. Otherwise, we would have budgets reduced from what they were in the current fiscal year. And just emphasize again that this does have impacts. Number of layoffs up to 29, I believe, maybe on the school side. On the town side, we're not going to, our public health nurse recently left. We're not going to fill that position. We're not filling a position that just became vacant on the highway department. The Council on Aging was hoping to have another staff person for the new senior center. That isn't funded under this. The van driver for Council on Aging is not funded. Police and fire both had drastic reductions in their overtime, which for fire more than likely is going to result in a closing for a good deal of the year. The Chartley Station, they probably will be opening that during emergencies or when snowstorms are coming, things like that. The police department, it's going to hurt them in filling shifts. So it will lead to a reduction of officers on the street. And at times, in order to keep the number on the street, they'll have to close the station for times. So just some of the impacts of that 1% budget.
And there were some reduced hours too, right, Mike? Like I know the town clerk, there's going to be a
Right.
reduction of hours there.
Right. Yep. And reduction in hours for part-time staff in the inspections department.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Joe.
Mike, I just want to verify one thing. I'm looking for the summary sheet in our packet. I don't see it. We've talked about 1.2 million for free cash. Is that the exact number? I assume it's not.
It is. You're right. 1.2 million is what we're using from free cash.
Exactly.
Are you saying is that what's in free cash?
No, I was looking like
Yep. 1 point
number, or was it like 1,192,000? Blah blah blah.
1,200,000, and we also had to increase the amount from ambulance receipts. That's up to $1 million.
Thank you.
For anyone out there, we're very dependent. Other than the 2.5, the only thing we have is new growth. And we've been fortunate over the last few years. There's been some good commercial development in town. And I know the building commissioner and the assessor met to review possible new growth for next year. And they just don't see that commercial development happening that we've had in the past few years. So our commercial growth is less for this coming year.
Does anyone have questions about this
Madam Chair?
overview? Yes, Bill.
Mike,
Yes,
does the owner of what used to be the Roach Brothers Plaza, given that it's 40–50% empty, is he getting any type of rebate or anything on his taxes?
I would imagine he probably files. I can't say for sure. If everything in a commercial property like that, everything is, they have to submit what their rents are, and everything is based on the building and the rent. So I'm sure he's not paying what he would pay if the place was full.
And do we have any anticipation of the building, the apartment building behind it, what that's going to add next year?
We do know, I don't have that, but I know the assessor would know that. That was part of our new growth for this current year.
Anyone else have questions or comments?
Madam Chair? Mike, I guess one last question.
Sure.
Is there anybody who, within the town or I don't think it's called the IDC anymore. I forget what it's called. But, you know, is there anybody trying to lobby either a smaller grocery store or something like that to get into that plaza?
I know,
reaching out.
I know that Paul DiGiuseppe constantly is reaching out to different grocers to see if we can get someone in there. The big drawback is the rents they charge. I think the previous market was paying $10,000 a month. Just wasn't.
And the one that just left?
Yes.
Ouch.
Yeah, I know.
They weren't doing that in business.
No.
Thank you.
One of the stores that I'll have to check with Paul and see if he's reached out to. One of the ones I was reading about the other day, Aldi's is one of the stores that is expanding. There are 21 in Massachusetts, I guess. I know Paul has reached out to Trukey's, and he keeps trying.
Mike, if you could just stop on this page
Sure.
real quick. I just want to give a little bit of a summary, I guess, of our meeting last Monday when we were discussing these budgets and putting our recommendations in. We had a long discussion about the police and fire budgets. There was a suggestion to take money from stabilization. Overwhelmingly, the committee was not for that to fund the police and fire budgets, considering, we don't want to deplete our stabilization account, knowing that we need that when we go out for bonds. But then there was a question about possibly using more ambulance receipts. I think that Deputy Chief Wilson was going to ask Chief Simmons about that. Do you know if there was a answer on that one?
Yep, I can fill you in, and I know the chief is on too. We reviewed that, and on average, ambulance receipts are about 1.4 million a year. And the feeling was if we were to put 1.3 million into budgets, it really hurts. What happens when we have a year where we don't meet that, and we've already put it in the budgets. And also, if we put 1.3 out of the 1.4 into budgets, it limits the capital, the amount of money that's available for the fire department for capital. And I know they've got some large things they're looking at, including a ladder truck possibly in the future. We just didn't feel it was feasible to do that. And if the chief wants to add, or the deputy chief, they can.
I'm like, no, I think that's pretty accurate. I mean, I would consider it, I wouldn't object for like a one-time purchase. I'm not sure of the sustainability if we were to do that annually. If we're averaging 1.4, we're gonna take 1.3 out of there.
Thank you, Chief.
Mike, I thought they were looking at 200,000 out of that additional, not 300.
I don't, is that what it was? 1.2? Yeah.
1.2, put $200,000 back into the overtime from ambulance.
Yeah, I would say for me, I'd still probably have the same opinion. I can say, last year we went from 700,000 to 750,000. This year we're proposing to go from 850 to 1 million, so.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like for the fire budget, in order to provide them what they requested, they would need another $254,120. And for the
Yeah.
police budget, to provide them what they requested, they would need another $118,321.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Paul, yes.
to Chief Simmons, Chief, is it time to review the actual cost per run? I don't know if that's been looked at in a while.
We did that, good question. We did that about 2 years ago. So probably about this time next year, we would be on track to reevaluate the ambulance, billing rates. So,
Thank you.
Yep.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Zach.
didn't we take in 1.9 million in ambulance receipts last year? I know you guys did a 5-year average, but if the trajectory, if it's on the trajectory that it's been at, I mean, you could be over $2 million this coming year if you get some population growth and with all these housing going into the town.
Madam Chair, I can answer that if you'd like.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Looks like last year we were at 1.665 million. This year, I just tried to check it earlier, we're approximately projected to do about 1.8 million. But this, the 5-year average was 1.4. Past couple of years, we've done a little bit better. But a lot of that can vary based on our call volume, the payer mix, which basically means what type of insurance people have. For example, you're going to get a higher payment with like Harvard or Blue Cross versus a Medicare patient. And they've also been talking about ambulance billing reform too. So they've been talking about that for a while. So I don't think that's going to go through, but that would also be a concern for us.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Cody.
Chief, how much are you projecting the ambulance receipts to go down when you're having to close down shortly?
It's not necessarily the station that'll affect that. It's going to be our ability to staff the second ambulance. So about probably around 750 times a year, we're doing at least 2 calls at the same time. So the decreased staffing will affect our ability to manage multiple calls like that. So it's really hard to predict. But it could be in the area of $100,000. I'm just kind of guessing. It's really hard to predict that.
But you do expect there to be a negative impact on that?
I do, yes.
I also have questions for the chief.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
one additional question. Now that the town failed to pass the questions on the ballot to exit civil service, how much of that is going to impact your budget?
The big thing that was impacting our budget for the exit from civil service was the having to pay for a promotional exam. So that's probably I think that was in the area of about $8,500 to $9,000.
Is that number baked into these budget numbers, or were these numbers going
That
on?
number was correct. That number was in our budget under professional service. I believe it was a line item.
Okay, so the budget here assumes that you stayed in civil service.
That's correct. There's kind of a lot of moving parts to that because the collective bargaining agreement actually specifically states that they'll be out of civil service starting July 1st of this year. So that's something that we're going to need to work through to find out how we're going to handle it.
Does that potentially mean it's going to cost more legal fees and services to renegotiate all of that?
It's possible, yeah, and quite honestly, I'm not sure if we're gonna keep with, the promotional process that we had already established, or if we're gonna move back into the civil service model or not.
Comments or questions about, these discussions we've been having on the police and fire department budgets? For those-
Madam Chair,
Yes, Paul.
Mike Units, is there a chance that there's going to be a special election to break the, school committee tie? And if so, can the civil service question be, re-put out there to the voters with maybe more education?
We'll think about that. It may, I don't know if that's too soon or if we wait until next year in April, but we'll have to talk about that. I think, yeah, it was unfortunate that I don't know if we got enough out there to let people know that, how antiquated civil service has become and all the issues it creates and how the union actually negotiated, as the chief said, to exit as of June 30th, 2024. So, I mean, the union was on board with it. And most of the towns around us have gotten out of civil service. So it's unfortunate that we're stuck with it. But we have to check with legal counsel also and see if we're town meeting approved exiting civil service, if we can go with that and exit based on the town meeting vote rather than the ballot vote, but we'll see.
Thank you.
Oops. A lot of visitors tonight. Any questions from the audience too? We have a question from the audience who would like to hear from the school department about the expected impacts of the 1% budget. Dr. O'Neill, I think you're on, correct?
I am, Paula, thank you very much. Would
Excuse
you,
me, Madam Chair, you want me to stop sharing, Jen?
I was gonna ask if you would mind
Yeah.
if I could share for a minute, Mike. Thank you. So the staffing impacts that I am sharing with you all tonight are to help us meet a 1% budget. The following 29 staff positions have been eliminated for the 24-25 school year. So last Friday, we gave out 44 letters. That impacts people who are strictly a reduction in force. Some staff members that saw their full-time status go down to part-time. And also staff members that are being transferred from one role to another. This also included anyone that was a long-term sub or perhaps had a one-year position. So I just want to show you guys these 29 positions that will not be part of the budget for the upcoming year. It's 4 paraprofessionals across the district, a guidance counselor at Norton High School, the district nurse leader. So currently all of our schools have a nurse, and there's one nurse that kind of oversees everyone and goes from building to building. And it's really, really helpful because it's extremely hard to get a substitute nurse when a nurse is out sick. And that person also handles all of the paperwork, all of the mandated screenings that go along with that. We eliminated one of the 2 music teachers at Norton Middle School. The elimination of middle school world language, which is 2 staff positions. An English teacher at Norton Middle School and a math teacher at Norton Middle School. We eliminated a reading interventionist, 2 of our 3 math interventionists. The art teacher at Norton Middle School is actually taking a leave of absence. We are not backfilling that position. We have 2 instructional technology specialists that have been eliminated. They support staff and its students district-wide. The elementary math coach and the elementary literacy coach. A preschool teacher, a science teacher at Norton High School, a social studies teacher at Norton High School, one of the two music teachers at Norton High School, a wellness teacher at Norton High School, a speech and language pathology assistant. So this particular person was working with preschool as a part-time. That position was eliminated. 2 custodians, daytime custodians. The middle school dean of students, that person really worked to build culture and worked really, really closely with students. It was not just a disciplinary position. We are also reducing a school administrator. We had an administrator leave this year, and we are actually not going to be backfilling that position, and instead taking a look at the administrators that we have and reallocating some of that. And then we also, these were some of the reduced time. So elementary art was reduced by 0.12, elementary STEAM by 0.32, elementary library by 0.4, and elementary music was reduced by 0.2. So that is 29 positions that will not be here next year.
Dr. O'Neill, real quick, I thought I saw at the JCS there was like a principal, there was a reduction on the principal salary, or did I misread that?
So that's the school administrator.
Okay.
JCS currently has a principal and an assistant principal / early childhood coordinator. The assistant principal / early childhood coordinator has moved on for a new experience professionally, and so we will not be backfilling that role. We will instead be using our current administration to fill that capacity.
So see in the chat, are the middle school and the high school seeing more cuts than the elementary level schools?
So one of our, as you can see, we're losing a reading interventionist, the 2 math interventionists. Those elementary coaching positions are actually really central to teaching and learning. And because we were losing a lot of those support positions at the elementary level, we tried really hard to keep the cuts away from the elementary classroom. There's a lot of research out there that talks about the importance of class size at the elementary level. Students are building foundational reading and math skills. And so therefore we've made every effort that we possibly could to keep away from those particular positions. Therefore, we looked really closely at where perhaps we could make some adjustments. Last year, the high school lost a math teacher and an English teacher. So this year we looked at science and social studies and reduced those departments by 1. The incoming 6th grade class at Norton Middle School is a little bit smaller than our other cohorts. So what we're doing is we're taking a team and a half approach to this. So it won't be 2 full teams for the 6th graders next year. It'll be they'll be down 1 math and 1 ELA teacher, and we'll be having some of our other staff teach a few sections as well. So it's a little bit of a different model. We had to get really, really creative to get to 29 positions. When we were looking at our line item budget that was shared with the Finance Committee, the majority of our reduction obviously was salaries. We took $2.4 million out of salaries, and then an additional $374,000 out of our special education salaries, which were the paraprofessionals and that SLPA.
When you mentioned that the art teacher left and you're not filling that position, does that mean there'll be no art at the middle school?
So that means students will not have access to an art class during specials this particular year. We're hoping that
7th and 8th?
Correct. Yep. We're hoping that perhaps we can offer art as some sort of after-school club if there's somebody that is interested and able to do that through a small stipend. But when we were looking at different positions, and this person said they were planning on taking a leave next year, it became something that made it a little bit easier for us to maybe not cut something else. None of them feel good, though. I'm sure you can imagine, Paula. There are so many positions here that really are needed for all of our students. It's really heartbreaking to see this many.
Yeah, I definitely understand you had difficult decisions to make. What about the band? So you talked about art. What about band at middle school and high school?
So band at Norton Middle School will be an after-school program, just like our athletics. hopefully going through and doing a stipend position, much like we do for sports and clubs. This will still give students the opportunity to participate. It just won't happen during the school day. And at this time, we are still keeping band during the school day at Norton High School.
There be fees for those?
Yes.
Art, band, after school?
It'll go on to the clubs.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm just gonna try to keep up with all the questions.
No, I appreciate it. And I'll look too and see if I can.
The current, there was a question about class sizes, at the elementary, middle, and high school, and I don't know if they want to know the current right now or what the current's gonna be with these.
So current class sizes, the question asks about current. So currently right now, our elementary classroom sizes are anywhere between 21 and 24. We anticipate those remaining the same because we have made the commitment to not cutting elementary classrooms. At the middle school, grades 7 and 8 will again remain about the same. They're about 22 to 24. Those will stay about the same. In grade 6, because it is such a smaller cohort, those will actually be around 25 to 26 because we're spreading them across a team and a half versus 2 full teams. At the high school, I do anticipate seeing class sizes go up, especially in some of our core classes where instead of having 8 history teachers, we now only have 7. So we'll be dividing students up amongst those required classes. Those class sizes will be a little bit bigger. We'll also be looking at what options we have in terms of electives, and maybe not all of our electives will run like they typically do.
Renee, I believe you had your hand up next before the next question came in. Renee, do you want to ask your question? Okay. Moving on, someone else asked about increasing fees.
Yes.
For...
So last week at the school committee meeting, the board looked at and discussed increase in fees, and they did some voting as well. The sport athletic fees are going up $50 per sport. So the majority of our athletics are currently at $250. They'll go to $300 at both the high school and the middle school. For example, at some of our middle school programs are cross country or wrestling. There's not a huge cost there, so they're a little bit less expensive than some of the other courses. Some of the other sports, I believe, they're $125, so those go up to $175. And then hockey is going to go up $100 from $350 to $450. Hockey has always been a little bit more expensive than some of our other programs, just simply because of the cost of ice time. Additionally, we are keeping the fee for clubs the same. It will remain at $50, but right now we have a cap that only charges, I believe, up to $100. So what will happen is that we'll take that cap away, and students and families will have to pay for every club that their child joins. A good example of this is our middle school drama program. As I think almost everyone on this call knows, we have an extremely successful middle school drama program. We have about 100 students that participate every year. The time of the year that it happens is in the spring. So typically the majority of our students have kind of maxed out on their club fees at that point. We really don't bring in a lot at that time for the drama program. So that will just remove the cap. And then transportation is going up $50 per student from $250 to $300.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Joe.
Dr. O'Neill, the increase in fees for the sports, does that actually cover all of the costs for sports, or is there?
Thank you, Joe. That's a really great question. It actually does not. In the past, we have had conversations about a pay-to-play model. And so what that would mean is that the students that are participating would be responsible for every single cost that goes into playing the sport. So, for example, if you're playing basketball, you would be responsible for paying the refs and getting the court time if we had to pay, whatever, travel to and from games. And the basketball team's pretty small. There's usually only 10 to 12 kids on a basketball team. So I believe when we last did that calculation, it'd be about $1,800 per student to play basketball. Whereas something like track is totally different. You may need to pay for transportation. It's a big team. You're getting to and from meets, uniforms, referees. But when you're dividing that cost amongst 100 students that run track, it's so much more nominal. And I think we only saw maybe $100 or $125 for students to run track. So it's actually a really huge disparity when it comes to what the costs are for pay to play. And it's just something that I think we know how difficult the fees are for our families. And, there was a lot of conversation at the school committee meeting last week about, not wanting to increase fees. And, we looked at going higher. And one of our school committee members said, when we presented our budget, we said it was going to be a $50 increase. So let's keep it to that for the community.
Okay, it just may sound heartless, but not cutting 29 full-time employees versus not, losing more money out of for sporting events seems short-sighted to me, I guess I will say.
There's really no good choices here, John. There really aren't. But no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Dr. O'Neill, the increase in the fees, right now the transportation and sports fees are capped. Is that correct?
No, they're not.
They're
We
not?
put the cap a couple of years ago.
Okay, so it's 300 per kid, per sport, no cap per family.
Correct.
Transportation is going to be 300 per kid, no cap per family.
Correct.
And that's, how do the transportation fees work? It's based on Mass General law, so you're only required to bus outside of 2 miles.
Yeah, so the way that the state requires is that Norton is required to transport any student in grade K to 6 that lives more than 2 miles from school. If a student is in grade 7 through 12, it does not matter how far away they live. They are not mandated busing. The committee also looked at what it would cost or what would be the savings if we went from providing busing for students at the just for mandated, and we weren't taking in any fees. So when we look at it, right now we're currently taking in about $130,000 worth of transportation fees. We would lose that. We would still need to run buses to the middle school because we would be required to transport 6th graders, but not 7th and 8th. And it's only about a savings of $80,000. And I think we all know, and I don't know if Chief Clark is on this call, but that would just be an increased nightmare on 123 in the morning. And it wasn't a huge savings. We recently, actually last Thursday night, also just approved our new transportation contract for the next 5 years, working with Bloom, and we were very happy with the increase. It was about just around 5% for the upcoming school year, which when comparing to some of our other communities and colleagues, they were going to be, 7, 8, 9, 10%. So we're very fortunate right now that we were able to keep it in that ballpark.
A related follow-up question, if I can, Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
It pains me as someone who benefited from a full athletic scholarship and sports saved me. But I have plenty of friends who music and arts saved them. That's their outlet.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like every time we talk about cuts, we are talking about cutting arts. Every single time. And we never have a serious conversation about cutting sports. And it's a big number in the budget that you're looking at. How frequently does that come up? And, I know there's Title IX ramifications on when you're talking about cutting one versus another, but it seems very one-sided.
I'll be honest, it comes up all the time. It comes up almost every time that we meet. We have lots and lots of conversations. So when we were looking at potential cuts for this year, one of the comments was, we don't want to cut programs and leave them out so kids don't have access at all. Right now, students have access to sports after school. And the comment was made, what if we do music after school as well? And that way kids can participate that way and we're not taking away from them, almost going along with the sports model that we've been using for our music programs and band as well. There are districts that do it that way, and there are districts that have it during the day. It's really varied based on the community and what they're able to sustain. Last year's budget eliminated it altogether, where this year's budget, we're really hoping to be able to provide it after school for students. The late bus is still part of our bus contract. It visits the middle school and the high school. We have a number of students that currently take advantage of the late bus. And I would hope that our students that are musically inclined will continue to do so as well.
I appreciate they're all terrible choices. As an athlete that benefited greatly from sports throughout my life, music and arts, I always loved, and it was a great outlet. And it's such a shame that gets cut, because it's universally accepted, well documented that everyone benefits from it, that education benefits from it. Every kid, it taps into a different part of their brain, and it's just
Absolutely.
so crappy that's where we.
And I think that's the challenge, right? There's no good decisions. None of them feel good. None of them make me happy. None of them make me proud to be sitting here in my first budget year and going through and talking to you about these decisions that have been made. But when you're only getting 1% and it's about $300,000, it's devastating. It truly, truly is. And I know there's been a lot of comments on social media over the last few days about, the schools had said 44 at one point. We have scraped and looked at every corner and under every rug and behind every shrub to see if we can find other ways to make these things work. And when we were, as Mike mentioned earlier, if we weren't able to use free cash, we would be looking at less of a budget than we have right now. And when that's huge. And so one of the questions somebody asked me recently was like, well, how do you estimate the number of teachers? We say, okay, 65,000, 68,000, that's typically about an average. And then you have to make an estimate. We've been fortunate this year in some capacity to have staff members that have said, I'm going to take a personal leave, or I'm going to retire. And while it's so, difficult because that experience and that expertise is walking out the door, it has been able to save us a little bit financially as well.
Renee, are you ready to ask your question? I think you were next.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. And just so you know, I might not be able to figure out how to raise my hand afterwards. So I had a couple questions, a couple for Dr. O'Neill and then one for Mike Eunice. So if I could start with Dr. O'Neill first. Dr. O'Neill, you were talking about the fees, and I apologize if I missed this when I lost the call, but how do our fees compare with other towns? So the busing fees as well as the sports fees.
They're definitely on the higher end of some of our surrounding communities. I'll give you a personal example. I live in Mansfield. I think I pay $150 for my daughter to ride the bus. She is a freshman, and then we pay about $175 for her to cheer 2 seasons. They're definitely a little bit higher. Every community is a little bit different, but ours definitely are high for the area. A few years ago, the school committee and Dr. Byetta voted to decrease our fees, and we instituted caps in order to make them more manageable for families. But unfortunately, it only lasted a year or two before we had to bring them back up again, just because of situations like this.
Okay, great, thank you. And then, as you were talking about the teachers and those that potentially, the positions that will be coming back, I was wondering, because you hit, I think you said social studies, and then there's some math and some reading, specialists in there. How have our test scores been, like the standardized test scores? Are we still trending behind a bit because of COVID, or, are we
So
kind of back where we're supposed to be?
as Norton as a whole has seen some decline over the last few years. Statewide, there was a significant decline post-COVID as students had a lot of interrupted formal education experiences. However, we're seeing a lot of communities have kind of bounced back and are starting to trend upwards again. We're not doing that in all areas, and I apologize. I don't have everything right in front of me, so I'm going off my memory here. We have definitely have some areas that we're proud of, and we've seen some really great growth. But there are definitely grade levels and content areas where we are significantly below the state average. And when you think about the state average, it's not just communities like Norton, it's Wellesley, Weston, but it's also the urbans like Brockton and Lawrence and Springfield. So we definitely are a community that should be well above the state average. And we've been doing a lot of work in the last few years to really look at our instructional materials, to look at our process for referring students for intervention before we get to the need for an IEP. So there's a lot of great work that's happening. And some of those positions that you've seen, like our reading interventionists, our math interventionists, our instructional coaches, have been really a driving force in a lot of that work, which is unfortunate.
So we can reasonably conclude that we won't see any improvements if these positions are eliminated.
Well, I don't want to say, I never say never, because we don't know.
Right.
No, we don't know. And it's, standardized test scores are so difficult because from year to year, we're really comparing different groups of students, different assessments, different teachers. But I would say it's definitely going to make our work harder.
Okay, thank you. And Madam Chair, if I can ask a question of Mr. Yunus?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. Mike, I remember early, and I apologize, I don't have the complete details, but I remember earlier in April, at one of the FinCon meetings, you guys had talked about you and James, I think, were talking about some money that had been allocated at various town meetings throughout the years, maybe the past 10 or 15 years, that hadn't been spent yet. I thought that you guys were going to come back with a summary or review of that money and a discussion on what if those funds could be returned to the general fund. And I don't know if that was addressed at FinCom, but can you talk to that a bit?
Sure, I know James. Was that? I know that James was going through those accounts. I'm not sure if he did send something back to the FinCom. I thought he had, but
Yeah, we haven't gone over it yet, though.
Okay.
He did email, but we haven't gone over that in the meeting
Yeah.
yet. James, do you
so
want to speak to that? Or Mike, you can, I guess.
so I think what James will say is that some of those are things that have not closed out yet, like an ambulance. I know was one of the things they're waiting for, which was capital funds. And there were some other projects that hadn't been completed yet. James, want to?
Madam Chair, yeah, that is correct. There are some capital items that are recent, and there's a lot of older accounts that will be closing out at the end of the year once we get confirmation from the department heads that they no longer need those funds for the projects that they were approved for. Some of them are related to the town hall, and we're waiting for the town hall project and the senior center to be completed 100%. And then once that happens, those funds will close out. Most of those funds will go back to the capital account, not to free cash, because they go back to the original funding source. And a lot of them were funded through the capital account. Some of them are going back to the ambulance account if that was the funding source.
James, can I ask, why were there separate line items for the new town hall if that was, if the cost for that was from the debt exclusion?
So, the town hall project has been an ongoing battle over the last, ever since I've been employed by the town over 18 years. They've been trying to build a new town hall. At one point, probably maybe 10 years ago, maybe a little longer, we received $1.4 million in, I believe it was building permits. A one-time big permit might have been El Nylon or one of those. I cannot remember exactly which big project it was.
It was on Nylon.
That money was set aside for the construction of a future town hall. Then future town meetings, somebody got up a town meeting and said, we want every time you guys want to use that money to come back to town meeting and reappropriate it. So what happened was when we were doing the bids, when we were doing the architectural work, when we tried to do the Reed and Barton property, all of that, we would have to go to town meeting and appropriate money from the 1.4 into a separate article. So the 1.4 kept going down, and then the money was being spent out of the other articles. And eventually, the Reed and Barton property didn't work out. And when the debt exclusion passed, the balance of the original 1.4, I believe it was like, at that point, it was close to 800,000, 700 and change, was used to reduce the amount to be borrowed. And then the rest stayed in the original articles, and we are going to close those out back. Those are going back to free cash once the projects are completed.
So is that it? Did you say, I heard you say something at the end of the year. Were you referring to the end of the fiscal year, or are you referring to the end of the calendar year? Or is it all project-based?
Yes, we close those out at the end of the fiscal year, so some of them may take another fiscal year before we close it. But it's not a lot of money either. It's not like hundreds of thousands. But we usually close them out. What happens is, as part of the closing procedures, I have to notify every department head to let me know whether I should close articles that are older. And if they tell me that yes, go ahead, close them, I go ahead and close them. If they tell me no, there is still something pending, I don't close it.
Okay, and so some of that money says going back to the general fund. So is there an opportunity, based on what Dr. O'Neill said on the average cost, is there an opportunity then that potentially there's some positions that we'll be able to fund?
That is up to the finance committee to decide, and the select board, and I believe that what I've been hearing lately is that the use of free cash shouldn't be used for operating expenses because it creates a bigger hole for the following year. I don't really know if that is, the money will be available, so it could be voted for any purpose. I don't know if it makes financial sense to keep using non-operating revenue to fund operations. But like I said, that's up to the elected boards and to the appointed boards to decide.
Sure. Totally understand that. I was just thinking because it's not, it was money that was allocated previously, right? It's kind of like, I don't want to say free cash because it's really not free, but I understand. And then, Madam Chair, if I can ask you just one final question. Thank you, James and Mike. So it sounds like you guys haven't actually reviewed the entire 1% budget. So are there plans for another public hearing once that is done?
So we just hadn't reviewed the school department budget for the 1% yet. We are doing that this evening.
Okay. So, that's the largest budget in town, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So will there be another public hearing? And if you don't know, that's fine.
Have time for that.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. O'Neill.
Okay, Bonnie had a question about the Yellen Middle School students. Would they still continue to be on the same buses?
Yes, at this time, we are not making any changes to bus routes. I have been asked by the school committee to take a look at start times, as well as the makeups and kind of configuration of our schools. So we have a committee that is working on that. We've taken a little bit of a pause because this budget season's a little bit crazy. We are hopeful that in the next few weeks we'll be able to start that back up. But no changes would happen until the fall of 2025 in terms of times or bus routes. There's also a question here about athletic budgets. Would you be okay if I answer that, Madam Chair?
Definitely.
So there's a question about what does the athletic budget support and what do the fees go to? So the fees work to subsidize the cost to the district for our athletic programs. They pay the coaches, they support whether it's uniforms or equipment that the teams need, transportation, perhaps registration for tournaments or leagues or any other things, really anything that goes into the athletic budget. And the $130,000 that we collect just subsidizes that.
Zach, I see your hand is up next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for coming, Dr. O'Neill. Question for you, when asked that probably I haven't seen anybody talking about yet, is how do we get out of this terrible spiral? Even assuming you pass an override and you bring a lot of these positions back, we come to next spring and everybody has their steps and lanes. Everybody has their contractual obligations, transportation, special education, all the stuff we've talked about year in and year out as long as I've been in this committee. That's all going to be more than 2.5%, including whatever the override is. And a year from today, assuming we pass an override, we'll most likely be here talking about layoffs again. I mean, even towns of your own that you live in, they have a massive industrial base. They have a massive commercial base. They've passed operational overrides, and you know where they are. You live there. You're paying fees, and they're laying off people.
I'm going to be paying for trash.
I know. So how do we get, it's all well and good. I mean, we'll go to the taxpayer and say, we need more money, and assume they give it to you. And then a year from now, people are going to be coming out of their skins when you say, here's my layoffs for 2026 budget because of what I just said, not to repeat myself.
Yeah.
And then if anybody has an answer to that, I'd like to hear it. Thank you.
You know, Zach, number one, great question. And I always appreciate the conversations that we have. When I took this job, one of the things that I had said to the school committee who was appointing me is that I'm a teaching and learning person. Like that has always been my background. I've always been extremely curriculum focused. And I feel like I've spent more time this year talking about budget versus anything else. And it's been like baptism by fire, which is, you know, both a blessing and a curse all at the same time. I think the biggest problem with the override conversation is that if we want to dig ourselves out of a hole and be good moving forward, or at least, you know, we had talked about a 5-year plan, and I know the school department, Christine Hadfield, and our team spent a considerable amount of time trying to figure out how to put those numbers together for you, because there's so many variables and so many factors. We have to do the number that's going to make sense. And so when we've talked about, you know, a $3 million override, a $4 million override. In those scenarios, the schools are still going to be making cuts because it's not level services for us. Mr. Units has been such a great partner in this whole process, and you know, he is emailing Christine and I asking for the 1%, the 4 million, the 6.5 million, and we're trying to put all of our budgets together. In the 6.5 million, we're getting a little more than level services, about $187,000 more, which is awesome. And I hate to be that person that's going to say it, but even $187,000 over level services, we're still going to see some sort of need to reassess in the following years, which makes it really, really difficult. I've been in Norton for 21 years. I know the reality of the community. I know the reality of the budget issues that we're having. I think a big part of it is there are so many factors that we as a community cannot control. We cannot control the costs of special education tuitions for collaboratives and for private schools. We literally have no control over transportation. We were very fortunate to get a reasonable bid from Bloom, but it's always one bid. We don't get any competition. The way that model works, we really, truly, our hands are tied. There's been a lot of conversation about inflation these last few years, 7, 8, 9% inflation. The budget for the schools across the state only went up 1.5%. So there's all these competing things that are happening, and there's no strong understanding of how to fix the problem. One of the things that they're talking about, excuse me, my allergies are killing me this week. One of the things they're talking about at the state level is taking that $30 per student minimum aid that Norton always gets, and they're talking about moving it up to $104 per student. That would be amazing. If we were to get $104 per student, that would be about, and Christine's not here, so of course I don't have my math really available to us. Last year we got 30, with $60, it would be 60,000, 65,000. So, it would be great. That would be amazing. But we have communities around us that are getting $900 per student. They're getting $1,200 per student. It's not equitable. And we're continuing to push the can down the road when really there's a burden on our community, but there's a burden on the state to get it right. And they are nowhere close to getting it right. So I know that's not an answer, but you're absolutely right. We'll be back here again unless the number is, I don't know.
Just a follow-up on that, if I may.
Yes, please.
So wouldn't it be more, and nobody wants this answer, that's not what anybody wants to hear, but to say that, unfortunately, the cuts that you have been forced to make are going to be cemented in, and even if we do get an override, we should maybe bring back a handful of the most key positions that you feel and not spend all the money, even though I know Mike's going to say you have to spend all the money. You can get creative, maybe stash your school choice money, whatever it may be, and say, okay, we're going to bring back only a handful of positions, and this will buy us some runway. If we get 4 million, 6 million, this will buy us some runway for 1, 2, 3 years, as opposed to, because, everybody's going to be coming out of their skin if you ask for more money and they give it to you. And then a year from now, we're in these meetings having a public hearing and saying, these are our cuts for this year because of, not to repeat myself over and over. That's, I think, a balance. And again, it sucks, but a balanced approach is to maintain some of these cuts, get some more revenue, and try to buy yourself some runway, as opposed to, yep, we got 4 million, we got whatever the number is, and we brought all these people back, and here we go again.
Absolutely, Zach. I think if we are fortunate enough to have money given to us through an override process, whatever that number is, the school committee, we're going to be having a lot of conversations about what makes the most sense. And I have some amazing staff members that have, just gotten laid off, and I want to be able to say to them, like, well, maybe fingers crossed, but at the same time, I don't see how we're going to be able to move forward at the same level that we are at. It's just not going to happen. Christine and I had the conversation today about the $187,000. Like, we're not going to put a new position in. We're not going, we could maybe reduce fees a little bit, but we're going to need that money the following year. We're going to need to say, okay, let's, maybe we'll put it towards subs, or maybe we'll put it towards, relieving a little bit of school choice. but we can't do anything new. And that's, I get it, that's fine. I just want to keep some of what we have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. O'Neill, you just mentioned subs, so it made me think of it. I did see that line item reduced as well with the information you sent us. What
Yeah.
impact does that have? Could you speak to that a little bit?
So the way that we've paid for subs these last few years is through school choice. Literally because it is such a difficult line to predict, you know, similar to an overtime account. We don't know how often people will be out. There's no way to predict. The last few years, we've used some of that money to put a building sub in each building. This position is a 1-year appointment, and they just sub every single day. And it's actually really amazing because number one, they get to know the kids, and they're always available if we need somebody, and we need somebody every single day. But that's something that, you know, Christine and I would love to eventually move that out of school choice because it makes me worried about like if school choice dries up. That is definitely a need. We also pay for all of our instructional supplies, general supplies. All of that has come out of school choice for the last several years. I would really like to be able to move some of those costs back into the general fund as well. I really would love to get to a point where we don't have any recurring expenses in our school choice lines. Just like we've talked about, we don't want to have these recurring expenses in our free cash lines. It handcuffs our planning for the following year.
Thank you. Bill, I think you were next, I think.
Thank you. 2 questions, one for Dr. O'Neill, one for Mike, or maybe it hits both Mike and Dr. O'Neill, the second one. So, Dr. O'Neill, the first question, and I know we went over this in the joint meeting a couple weeks ago, and it's been part of the budget for years and years. School choice. So the original budget had $1 million-ish in money coming in. With these cuts, and I know, you know, some of the surrounding towns are also cutting, so, you know, are we hoping that our cuts are less painful than surrounding towns, so therefore we won't be impacted? Or have we thought that we got to cut this back a little bit?
First of all, you guys all call Mike Mike. You all don't have to call me Dr. O'Neill. I am Jen, so please, we do not have to be formal. Bill, it's a great question. It's actually something I'm really concerned about because people choose Norton because we give them a great educational experience. And we don't just give them a great educational experience, we give them a great school experience, whether that is through our drama club at the middle school or sports teams or in the electives at JCS that they have every Friday in the spring. Whatever that is, that's why people choose Norton. And when we're not able to offer that great school experience, people are going to look for other options. One of the things that I think we're probably really fortunate about is that a lot of our staff bring their own children here with them. And it becomes like a family affair because they're coming here to work, the kids come to school. And as long as they stay employed, I think they'll probably continue to bring their kids with them because they know how great our schools are, regardless of, you know, everything that we hear out there that's making a lot of noise right now. But it is concerning because we don't want to rely on funding that all of a sudden could go away. When I met with the committee on Thursday evening, I shared with them my recommendations for school choice for the upcoming school year. And we pulled back a little bit on new enrollments. We are not going to be taking any new enrollments in K-6 because we are not going to have some of those supports for intervention and teaching and learning for our students. And so we want to make sure that we're keeping class sizes reasonable there. And in grades 7 to 10, we're only going to accept 5 students per grade level. And what we're hoping is that this will continue to allow us to accept choice families if they are interested in able, in those key grades. But it's also not going to flood our system. And the other thing is too, we also, the school committee is really passionate about allowing Norton families to stay. Over the last several years, we've had families that have moved from town, whether it was due to a new job or a family divorce or something along those lines, and they want their kids to stay. And so sometimes it happens in January, sometimes it happens in March. We always allow those families to stay, and they are added to our school choice rosters over time. So that will be continued. And we're also allowing our Norton educators to bring their children if they wish. So once you're here and you're a school choice family, you are able to stay until you graduate. So this would just be any new families. That would be the only kindergarten increases we would see this upcoming year. But I think we just have to really continue to work with all of our families, not just our choice families, all of our families to make sure they want to stay. Because our Norton families have options too. And whether that is another public school, whether it's a charter school, which are also public schools, whether it's, private or Catholic or whatever it may be, they have other choices too. We want to make sure that we're giving people a quality experience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The second question, and again, it could hit, both schools and town. So I'll just throw it out there. The new apartment complex that's 95% done. It's probably 100 and some odd units. I'm sure we're hoping it's just either young families or people without kids. But is there any type of survey that says, hey, when these things open, X percent are going to be families, pushing into the schools? And 2, we're factoring in the tax revenue and whatnot as growth, but do we also kind of take out what we need as a town? Do we need more police? Do we need more different fire trucks or whatever? Do we factor that in? I mean, is this positive growth or in the end negative growth?
Dr. Jen, you want me to go first?
You go first, Mike, and then I'll fill in anything you missed.
As far as, I guess Jen would have to answer this. I'm not sure how many students are in the 274 East Main Street. It's a little larger apartment.
It's actually not a huge number. I think it's like 57 or 63, right in that area.
So this one is about half the size of that project. Probably more than half the size. We do, when the planning board is reviewing these projects, they obviously look at things like that as far as fire trucks and, if there was any need for any new equipment, we would put that on the developer at the time, and there really wasn't. And I know the apartments on East Main Street, there were some incidents there in the beginning, but nothing outrageous that would tax our services more.
And I think just from the school's perspective, it's so hard to predict what those numbers are going to be. As Mike said, I think there's 101 units over on West Main. And my understanding is that there are some studios, but there are also some 1-bedrooms and some 2-bedrooms as well. So until they are here, it's really hard to say. Also, I know there's a large amount of building that is happening on Pine Street right now. There are going to be 44 homes there, and those will be family homes. They're $1 million houses. So I think that is something we're looking at and thinking about too. And that's part of the reason that we're doing this district alignment work, is because we're concerned about LGN specifically. Like, there's really not a lot of space for us to add any additional classrooms over there. So, Zach was talking about, if we get an override, we can't necessarily spend all the money because we're going to have to think about potentially adding classrooms here and there. If we see a huge increase in student enrollment.
Cody, you had a question.
Yes, thank you. I can't help but call you doctor anymore because I feel like it's deserved. It's your doctorate.
Jen is fine, Cody.
One of the, so I've got a friend that's a teacher in Easton. He was at their school committee meeting last week. They were facing a $1.5 million shortfall thereabouts. They were fortunate enough that their town had the money and worked with the town manager there, that they found 1.5 in their budget and gave it to the schools and said, good for you, but you can't count on this in the future. But part of that conversation that came up was something about them being seen as a feeder to Brockton, and because of that, they get some sort of like the amount that they get per kid is more than we get. It's closer to 100 currently, but there was something about them trying to be seen as a feeder to Boston. I don't know the ins and outs of that, but I don't know if you know what that means, and if because we're considered like the MBTA commuter community, whatever, because we're adjacent to Mansfield and like all of that entails. Is there something there where we could tap into that and say, well, we're a commuter community to Boston or Attleboro or where yeah, to Providence. Like, is there a way we can do that? I don't know that Providence works because we're not getting Rhode Island taxes. No. But it was interesting to me because I had no idea what he was talking about. I had no time because I literally heard it yesterday to dig into it. But the question that came up about the apartment complexes, I know that the financial need is a factor in that, and generally speaking, families that live in apartments are lower income, and then that, like, the more families that come in that are lower income can drive that metric down or up, however you want to view it, so that when you're looking at Chapter 70 funds and that really unnecessarily complex calculation, as the income level drops in town, there's a consideration, there's a factor that goes into that we get more consideration on Chapter 70 reimbursement from the state. I just didn't know if that was something that you knew about, or like that has been explored. Literally just came up yesterday, so I have very little information to go off of it.
I'll be honest, Cody. I'm not exactly sure what they mean in terms of a feeder to Brockton versus a feeder to Boston. But I know Lisa Cabral, who's the superintendent over there, and Chrissy Pruitt, who's the assistant, very, very well. And I will reach out and kind of see if I can get some context around that for you. In terms of community demographics impacting the Chapter 70 funds, it's absolutely true that they do. So the entire formula, one aspect of it looks at our low income ratio. And that number has actually gone down in Norton, over the last year or so. When Dr. Ackerman was doing his Title I work recently, they said, oh, you might not be able to do that next year. You might not meet the threshold. So I was actually kind of surprised to hear that. but it really does ebb and flow every single year. So it's difficult. So like communities like Attleboro, Stoughton, where Dr. Byetta is now, they are definitely receiving more per pupil than we are.
Thank you.
I see a question on the chat about explaining taxes. Who wants to take the wheel on this one? Someone who bought a house in 2011, their taxes were $5,200 and now it's $11,000. And how would we explain that, and a hesitation to the override because of everyone seeing their taxes go up with the debt exclusion and everything else? Mike, do you want to explain the tax levy and all that fun stuff?
I'll try. If their taxes have gone up, most of that would be due to the value of their properties, their property becoming more valuable. But the debt exclusion itself is really just starting to hit the bulk of it. I think it's $63 on the average $512,000 house. So you'd have to figure that based on your value. But any other increase, we haven't had an override or a debt exclusion other than the projects. So,
Mike, do you have readily available? I remember you shared it in the last joint meeting, the breakdown of what the tax increase would be based on the $4 million override, or I don't know if you had the $6.5 million override at the time, but there was like a breakdown on the average of the house value and what your annual tax increase would be with the override.
let me
to see that.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it. While I'm looking, James might be able to find it quicker.
Please.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Zach.
there's a state website for that, and you can go in there, plug in the, maybe post that online, Mike. Plug in the town, the tax rate automatically comes up. Put in whatever number you want, and it gives you the calculations. I was playing around with it the other day.
Zach, could you plug that website into the chat maybe?
It's in my office at work. I don't have it right here, but I'll email it to you.
I can share my screen.
And while, like I said, I'm just wanting the public to see this for their information, but while we're showing that, Nick Schleicher also has a question about what debt exclusions do we currently have? I know you just mentioned
The high school project, and the fields, the town hall, and the senior center. So this just shows $1 million. So depending on the value of your home, you just have to multiply. $1 million override. You can see what the impact would be on the average, which is $510,794. So the average single family tax bill impact from a $1 million override would be $137.91. And let me see I think we had them all.
And it looks like someone from the audience too just did find that website that Zach was referencing in the chat there for anyone who's interested.
There's the $4 million override. So the average single family tax bill impact would be $546.55. And I don't even know if I have a 6.5 here.
Yeah, maybe not, because I know that you produce these documents. But, oh, there's the six million.
6.
Close enough. Close we're gonna get.
So 6 million on a $510,000 Dollar House is, 817.27.
Okay, thank you for sharing that.
Okay.
Nick also just asked about the debt exclusions. Will we see another significant increase of debt exclusions on our tax bills come January of 2025? James, would you have an answer to that?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yes, we've already borrowed 100% of the athletic field bonds, and about 80 to 85% of the town hall and senior center. Once those projects are completed over the next few months, we are planning to go out to borrow in October or last piece, depending on how much the projects come in at the end. And those bonds are going to be added to the fiscal year 25 and 26. The current budget that you have in front of you with the 1% already has those numbers factored into it. There will be an interest payment in April for those additional funds. There is an estimated amount there for those. So yes, that would be the last piece of the borrowing that has to be done to complete those projects.
All right, thank you, James.
You're welcome.
Anyone else with questions? From the finance committee, from the audience? Okay. Hearing nothing. Do I entertain a motion to adjourn the public hearing? Oh, one more question, sorry. When are we expecting to be able to see the 4 million and 6.5 million budget versions? We just received the schools, I believe, I think like a couple hours ago, or at least I just kind of saw it come through my email a couple hours ago. We haven't seen the general government 4 million and 6.5 million override budgets yet, right, Mike?
You should have those.
Okay.
They should have been sent to you today.
Okay.
Did no one get them?
We have not gone over them. I don't remember seeing them.
Okay.
Any other finance committee see them today?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, that email. We did.
Okay. All right.
They came in late afternoon.
Okay. We're all still at work, I believe.
So, Madam Chair, would you want to go over those Wednesday?
Yes, as soon as possible. I don't know if we have time on our agenda to get to any of them tonight.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Joe.
I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second?
Okay, motion and a second to close our public hearing. Kevin?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Yes. Joe?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Cody?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Yes. Public is officially closed. Thank you, everyone who attended this evening.
Madam Chair, is it worth noting that they can still stay on and hear us discuss the further details? There will just be no additional questions and comments taken from them.
Yeah, definitely. This is obviously an open meeting to the public. Feel free to stay on and enjoy the evening. Okay,
Party.
it is a party. Woohoo! Okay, Mike, next up on our
Well-
agenda this evening is the,
Do you want the schools to go over the 1% budget?
yes, well, we have Dr. O'Neill, yes. I feel
Then
like
they
we
can-
kind of did that, but we'll definitely go into more detail.
Okay, so, as I shared, this 1% budget is, a reduction of 29 staff members. If you take a look through the line items, that we have here from you, the biggest reduction is in salaries. As I mentioned, we are eliminating a building administrator, as well as $2.4 million on the teacher line. That includes all of the counselors, the integration specialists, the coaches, all of those positions are included in that $2.4 million. There is also a reduction of about $374,000 for our paraprofessionals. I know I mentioned 4, but that actually maybe closer to 5 or 6 once we look at our numbers in terms of students and what their actual needs are. So at this time, we had 1 or 2 paraprofessionals that are resigning to move on in their career. And so we are at this point not going to backfill them. However, with everything that goes along with special education, it is day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute. So we are keeping those in our budget for right now. Additionally, some of the other reductions that you'll see here, again, staffing in terms of a guidance counselor at the high school, some instructional materials, and testing materials as well. The nurse there, that is the reduction from 6 nurses down to 5. And really everything else that you see in this budget is represented in school choice. The custodial services, we're taking 2 of our day custodians and moving them. So currently, some of our schools have multiple custodians during the day to keep up with students and lunches and everything else. With the reduction in 2, we'll have more of a floating system for the buildings, and they won't have 2 people all the time. So again, not ideal, but hopefully we'll be able to keep up with this process. Other things that go along with this reduction is, as I mentioned, we're using about $2 million in school choice, as well as, I'm sorry, I want to make sure I've got the right paper in front of me here. Also, there are a lot of other cuts just in terms of supplies, about $45,000 for general supplies, $80,000 in software. We are moving 1 of our custodians into the cafeteria revolving account just because of their role in maintaining and keeping that up. And then we're also looking at about $120,000 in anticipated salary savings. This comes along with people that may be retiring and then we are going to backfill. So for example, we have a school psychologist that is retiring. That is one position that we cannot leave open. So we're hoping that we'll be able to bring somebody in a little bit less. We also have a school adjustment counselor that's taking a year leave of absence. So hoping that we can backfill on some of those areas. So that's about $120,000 there. And then also taking into account the increased fees that we discussed earlier tonight. And then also looking at some of our central office stipends. So for example, we have someone who delivers mail from school to school. That will be something that we as central office administrators, when we're going to visit a school, we'll pick up the mail that's there and bring it over. It might just take a couple of days longer than maybe it takes now. And we'll have to bring it to town hall when somebody goes to town hall. So trying to look at all of the things, and, you know, while it may not seem like a big deal or a large stipend, it's, you know, as I said, we try to look, you know, under every shrub to see what we can move around here. But I'm more than happy to answer any questions for the committee.
Cody, you had a question.
Yeah, so if I recall correctly, last year with the cuts that were made, there were a lot of department heads that were, like, the stipends were cut, and essentially those aren't coming back. Teachers have had to exist without a department head. I see a lot of team leader and another department head. Does that essentially mean there is no one driving the departments, and it's, or does it just mean you hope that someone's going to step up out of the goodness of their heart and not, even though they don't get a stipend anymore?
So
doing that?
last year, we eliminated the academic coordinator stipend. And what that was the department heads at the high school specifically. We kept, the original proposal had kept the team leaders and curriculum leaders in K-8. And so during the summer, when we had a few retirements, we actually reinstated those at about a 75% cost. We entered into a 1-year agreement with the union and reduced that stipend. That is on the table again for this upcoming year. Instead of only eliminating the high school, it really is eliminating those teacher leadership positions, pre-K through grade 12. Our current model has teacher leaders at all grade levels. It's something that has actually existed much longer than I've been here. And over time, we've adjusted the job description to be really more focused around student data and curriculum leadership versus more housekeeping, which it was what it was initially. And so those are off the table again. And so that means is that the principals and the assistant principals, as well as the central office administrators, are going to have the responsibility of leading whatever work needs to be done, because there will not be someone leading that work. I think all of our staff do a lot of things, a lot of extra things without receiving a stipend out of the goodness of their heart. But at the same time, they shouldn't have to.
You'll get no argument from me though. It feels like, without a leader of a team and without direction and where you have, I don't know, 12 team leads across the district that are getting for however many it is, but in their place where you're taking, I don't know, 5 and you're inserting one person who already has a lot on their plate as an administrator. There's a lot of chatter online that really bugs me, because the initial reaction from people is cut administration. You don't need administration. Start at the top. It's all corrupt. Everyone's bad. Like, it's all nonsense and it's noise. But the ramifications of all of this is actually the administrators that are already taxed and overburdened with a lot of this stuff. You're taking away, the guidance counselors and the psychological positions and the nurses and all of these additional things. And then you're taking away team leads. There's not enough people to do all the work that needs to be done. And ultimately, on top of the fact that, class sizes are going up slightly in some cases, you're losing specialists, you're losing interventionists, you're like all the kids that need the extra attention and in order to not be disruptive and actually learn something. You're taking away the resources of all the people that actually deal with those individuals on a day-to-day basis, and you're saying everybody at the top suck it up and do more, and they're already doing as much as they can. And I know there's not much you can say to that, because it's more of a statement. It just really upsets me that, of course the senior leadership has to take on the role and has to absorb it, but there's only so much that they can do. And when you're eliminating 12 leadership positions and not asking 3 people to do the same thing that 12 people are doing, it's just absurd.
I appreciate the comment, Cody. And I think the only thing I'm going to say to that is someone in a professional development a few years ago told me behavior is communication. And that is absolutely right. And what we're seeing right now is an uptick in student behaviors. And that's just going to continue. And what students are trying to tell us is they're bored. They're not engaged. They don't know how to successfully master the content. And there are all different reasons why kids act out, but behavior is communication. And what our administrators are currently seeing is an uptick in student behavior, which really impacts everything we do. And so when our high school principal or our elementary school principals are dealing with student behaviors and everything that comes along with it, they don't have the opportunity to be in classrooms. They aren't able to see what kids are doing what teachers are doing. They can't give feedback. They can't see that a teacher might need something, might need an additional supply, or might need a little bit of support. And that's how teachers get burnt out too. And so I know there's a lot of call for administration, and I'll say, school is very different than when we were in school. And it's the expectations are constantly changing, and we jump through hoops a lot all day long because that's what Desi wants us to do too. So it's a careful balance. But thank you.
Zach, your hand is up.
Jen, just to follow up on my previous comments, and this goes to Mike also. I like to have, particularly when we're going to ask the residents for additional funds, to be fully transparent in what we do. So I know you both are busy as hell, and I know, and I'm not want to put anything more on your plate, but I think it would be helpful if we're honest with the taxpayers and we say a $4 million override, assuming a 70-30 split, will mean X for the schools. A $6 million override will mean X for the schools, X for the town, and we can be transparent. Like we said, you're probably not going to be able to bring everybody back, or we're going to be the same position next year. But we should be at least transparent and say, okay, if we do $4 million, this is what we can do, and we bought ourselves a runway of possibly 2 years. Something. Obviously, you don't know what the numbers are year to year. You're making a projection, but what do those actually do? Because some people are going to think, yeah, we'll pass a $4 or $6 million, and everything's wonderful. Everybody's coming back, and which just doesn't sound to be the case tonight. So I would think it would be helpful to everybody if we knew what that was. Thanks.
Well,
Yes, Steve.
so yeah, just a couple of questions on the budget, right? Going through it, I didn't see any real train impact. Are we fully functioning with train, and should we be seeing some energy savings in this year's budget? I didn't see anything from that perspective on the budget line.
Yep. So I am proud to announce that we are finally up and running with Train. We just had the high school solar panels go online during the April break, which is fantastic and quite honestly well overdue. And so we're very happy that is all up and running. Christine and James have had a lot of conversations back and forth about how to make it all work in terms of what our savings are. And so for this year, we anticipated about a $300,000 savings. At the same time, we were going to have to come back to the town and ask for about $350,000 in supplementary funds for special education costs. So after a lot of conversation, we are keeping the money that was the savings and not coming back and asking for any additional funds at Springtown meeting. And so hopefully with that, we won't have to ask for any money, but we also need to have some conversations between Mike and I and Christine and James about what this is going to look like in years ahead. One of the problems is when we return money, when it looks like we're giving back $300,000 to the town for these utility savings, it actually impacts our net school spending. And it looks like we're not meeting that minimum threshold in some cases. So that's something that we have to be very careful on both sides, both the town and the school side, because if the state sees that we're not meeting that threshold, we will be fined as a community. So we want to make sure that whatever is happening is done in a way that A, makes sense and it's not costing the community anymore, but also is done in a way that we're meeting our thresholds. So Mike, I don't know if you want to add to that at all.
No, I agree. We will have to sit down, and Jen and I will sit down with the smart finance people and Christine and James and figure that out.
So we should see from the actuals, at least expecting a $300,000 reduction in those line items from energy savings. Is that my understanding? And then we'll have to figure out, you won't come back for another 350
Yeah.
of supplemental funds.
So we are not coming back at the spring meeting for anything. We are making it work on our end this year. We are not asking for any supplementals, and it's thanks to James and Mike for allowing us to retain that savings that we're able to do that. So I think it's probably not going to look exactly the way that we would envision if it was looking like energy savings. But ultimately, it's a wash.
Okay. And I didn't see any savings from the maintenance of the fields. With the brand new fields, the turf fields, I know there's a lot of maintenance costs going into those. I didn't really see any kind of savings from those new fields. And the second part of that is, are we setting aside funds for the use, so like I say, a 10-year useful life for that turf field? Are we setting aside funds that we can replace that field in 10 or 15 years?
Yes. So currently, anytime that we rent out the fields, that money goes into a special line within our facilities revolving account. And any work or materials or supplies that are needed for the fields themselves come directly out of that line. We are not paying for the field maintenance with our regular budget. If we are paying someone for oversight or custodians to come or the groundspeople to come and clean anything up, it comes directly from those lines. And what our hope is that we'll be able to build that money up year over year. I apologize, Stephen, I don't have those numbers in front of me at the moment, but I know last year between March 1st and July 30th, we took in about $40,000. And so far this year, I believe we had taken in about 65 to 70. So we have almost about $100,000 available there. Whether it will be enough in 10 years or 15 years to replace it outright, I don't know. But it is definitely being set aside for that purpose specifically.
Okay. And I know you answered earlier on, one of the questions from last meeting was trying to understand the subs, where we're not expensing or we're expensing reduced. I think it was $5,000 for those salary lines, where the expend right now is like $220,000. Yeah. So one of the things,
not a choice.
Yeah, so one of the things we had asked is to understand when those transfers happen, right? I don't think we saw that kind of information yet. I know we're finally getting the financials for the month, but the other ask was when we transfer funds like that, so we can understand, have line of sight, so we can understand how that inner working happens. I don't remember seeing any kind of transfers to pay for those expense items so far.
Sure. So the way that our school budget, the school choice budget is set, is it looks exactly like what you have in front of you tonight for the 1% budget. It has all of the same lines. So when we are paying for substitutes, we are not doing any transfers. We're simply using the school choice lines to pay for those expenses. Christine and I can sit down and kind of maybe, and I believe we shared the school choice budget with you as part of the original budget book to show you where those lines are, but we could probably get you an updated version of what that looks like with these changes in the 1% as well.
Okay. And I did see, I know you referenced about the department chair stipends. I think that was one. One of the things I'm just curious on, I see where it looks like we're reinstituting about $63,000 of department chair stipends that wasn't in last year's budget. Where was that expense coming from? Or where will we fund that if it wasn't being budgeted?
I just want to make sure I'm on the right page here. I believe it was originally, we took it out as part of our cuts. I apologize, just give me 1 second. Oh, I see it right here. Okay, so we paid those out of choice this year, so that's why it looks like they are not in the budget there. But that was simply just the change that we made. And then also, there were other positions that were in school choice, which makes it look like, or they don't exist, but they do. So I will get us an updated school choice, budget over to all of you with the 1% as soon as possible.
All right, thank you. And just, if we go through to principal salaries, how many positions are there in those salary line items? Is that one or two? Is that both principal and assistant principals?
It is, if there's more than one administrator, then yes, it's both salaries combined. So, if you look, like JCS has 2 administrators, the middle school has 2 administrators, LGN only has 1, so that's the difference there. And then I also wanted to mention too, Steve, I shared with the committee the salary scales as well as our stipend sheets. I know that the committee was looking for a line by line of our salaries from last year to this year. And as I mentioned to Paula and as I mentioned to Mike, it's not like a data download for us. Our budget system does not actually talk to the town payroll system in a way that makes a lot of sense. So it's about like 6 different spreadsheets and it's a manual process. So we're more than happy to get that to the committee. We just need a little bit more time. And it's just been, as I'm sure you can imagine, a little bit crazy.
No, and I can understand that. It is a request each year, though, that we get that information. So it's somewhat disappointing that it wasn't part of this budget book because it was asked last year. So we can roll up and see the counts of the actual positions, right? That's one of the things.
In terms of how many actual teachers there are.
Correct. To roll those up by school, etc., and to find out what the components of pay are. Every other town budget has that in their budget book that we review. So,
and I think that the primary difference is just the number of employees. So 400 employees would just take Christine and Courtney a little bit longer than we had available. And I know that we've talked about this at least with the finance committee before, but I don't know if our audience is aware. The way that our salaries work, for example, the teachers, it's a 2.75% increase for this year. The teachers also have a step increase for years of service. So for example, if you are a first year teacher, you're on step 1, and then next year you go to step 2, it goes up to step 15. And teachers also get credit for educational experience. So a bachelor's degree versus a master's degree versus a doctoral degree. So it's really difficult to look at and just see that straight 2.75 because in most cases that isn't a true representation of where people are.
okay. And just my last one, just trying to roll up the 2024 budget presentation that we received earlier to the 2025 starting point.
Yeah.
It looks like we changed some departments and some budgeted positions, and it's just hard to roll those up because I also see some of the salaries that were being used in the
Could you tell me
budget.
where you're looking, Steve?
I can give you an example. So I'm looking at 1420 and 1410, comparing those line items to the 2025 budget book, and there seems to be some combination of positions there.
Okay, so 1410, that's the business manager salary, that area?
Right, and then I'm looking at, it's really the benefits salary, payroll benefits salary. The budget request for 2024 was less than what we're starting for the actual, it shows what the budget 2024 is.
Okay, so for example, if you were to look at last year's budget for my position versus this year's budget, there's obviously a difference in salary with staff moving with new staff. So for example, if you're looking at the 1% budget I shared with you, the second section, it's the superintendent's office. So you see my salary there on the first line, and then you see admin assistant salaries. And we've actually, if you look, we've gone down about $30,000. That's just because our new people in different positions this year.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I understand that, but I see some of them go in the opposite direction too, a little bit higher than what was expensed or what was budgeted for. So
okay,
just trying to correlate those.
No, I appreciate that.
All right. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair?
Sandy.
Hi, Jen, I just had a quick question on the salary. Was when you project those salaries out for next year, obviously you can project out, the step going down one, but how do you project out the lanes? Like, how do you know, do you just sort of do an average of what those are going to be, or how does that factor into your calculations?
No, great question, Sandy, thanks. So as part of our contractual practice, teachers are required to let my office know by December 15th every year if they anticipate moving over a column. So if they're taking coursework and they're moving from Master's 15 to Master's 30. And what we do is we project out those increases based on the reporting that we get from staff. And then they're required to turn everything into us over the summer. And in some cases, not everyone gets their coursework done by the deadline. And we have a little bit of a savings there. But that's how we do that.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else have questions about the school's 1% budget? Any other questions from the audience? Okay.
Madam Chair, actually, one more question for Jen. The ESSER funds, like the positions there, I'm sorry, I don't know if you already said this, but how many of the positions that were cut were ones that were using those funds previously?
So the math interventionist positions were from ESSER funds, as well as that reading interventionist. The nurse lead was also part of that list. And let me just look super quick. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, no, I think those are fairly accurate. Yeah, those are the ones that were there, Sandy. So actually, the math interventionist, we actually have 3 of those positions, and we're retaining one because we've had a math interventionist for a really long time, and so we're keeping 1 out of the 3 as part of our process. But those, and we moved that into the budget. But those are the positions that were used with ESSER funds. Oh, also the middle school dean, I apologize, I missed that one.
How many reading interventionists?
We're losing 1 at the Yale School. We have reading specialists that currently service students specifically in K to 5, and those are primarily funded through Title I federal grant funds.
Okay, anyone else?
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Zach.
I'm going to ask Jen a question that she does not have to answer today, but I'll ask it again in future. It was a question always put to me when I was in the corporate world working for other people.
So it's not what's my favorite bottle of wine?
No. What's your favorite ice cream? No, I'm not going to ask that. Is if you had an unlimited capital budget, what could you do with that budget to reduce your costs? Whether that could be something like I could build a brand new school and combine the 2 elementary schools. I could do something else. I don't know, whatever that is. You can think about that next time you come to a meeting. I'll that's the wild card question of the day.
All right, I like it. I'll think about it, but I'd say off the top of my head, we need a new roof at the middle school. That is
to reduce costs.
To reduce my costs, we'll start saving and mopping in buckets. But other than that, I'll get to you. That's a great one.
And thank you for answering all our questions.
Of course, happy to.
Thank you so much, Dr. O'Neill. Sorry, Jen.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night. Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mike.
I know we have representatives on from the Water and Sewer Department. Steve Bernstein, one of the commissioners, and Frank and John, and Steve Peterson, their engineer. So if we could go to Article 10, we talked about it at the last meeting where some of the members weren't there. And so if I could, rather than, I have the full slide presentation, but I figured everyone here has heard the history before. I just wanted to start with the cost of the project. As you can see, the total cost of the Elm Street improvements are 7.3 to 8.4 million. We did receive a MassWorks grant of 3.5 million. The water rates, so all the work to improve the water main on Elm Street will be paid for through water retained earnings and water fees. The remaining share is 1.8 to 2.5 million. And the proposal is that, as we said, you have the 3.5 million MassWorks grant. We're very fortunate to have that for this project. So there would be betterments assessed to the properties on Reservoir and Militaris, like there was on West Main Street, I'm sorry. And so the betterments would be 8,600 to 12,000, depending on the cost of the project, the low end to the high end. That would be assessed to any home, or when it comes to apartments, it would be based on the number of apartments. So for the 64 EDUs, as they call them, on Elm Street and Militaris, the residents, these 8,600 to 12,000 in betterments would amount to 500,000 to 700,000, or about 30% of the remaining share of the project. 47 Elm Street would pay EDUs in the area of 1.3 to 1.8 million, or approximately 70% of the remaining share of the project. As you know, this development it's part of the master plan to develop this site on Elm Street. And we were fortunate to get the $3.5 million grant to reduce the cost of the betterments, because as you see, without the grant, the betterments would have been 22.4 to 28.7. I know some of the questions that were asked at the last meeting were concerning people having to tie in that have new septic systems. I did check with the health agent, and I asked them to go back and look 10 years back. And in the last 10 years, there have been 5 septic systems put in, 4 on Elm Street and 1 on Militaris. So the remainder of the septic systems are 10 years old or older. And also, the health agent did inform me that there is a loan program. So if anyone on Elm Street is going to tie into the sewer, they can receive a loan, low interest loan from the Board of Health that will help pay for the cost to tie in. Anyone tying in would have to hire a contractor and pay the cost for that work. There is not another assessment by the Water and Sewer Department to tie in. The betterment covers that. And the betterment's over 20 years, or you can pay it off up front or whenever you want, or when the property is sold, it could be paid off. It would be paid off. I also asked town council, I know that it was asked, could the Water and Sewer Department waive the requirement to tie in? And as one of the commissioners said, that's not a water and sewer issue. That is a town bylaw that you have to tie in after 7 years. And as talking with town council, it's really an enforcement issue for the town. As I said the other night, do I think someone from the Board of Health is going to knock on someone's door? It's 7 years and 1 day and tell them to tie in? I don't. It's rarely done. I would think the only time that that's going to happen is if the Board of Health is put on notice that someone's system has failed. They're going to tell them that they have to tie in. And right now there are 2 systems on Elm Street that have failed, and they have not had to repair their systems or put in new systems because this project is in the design stages. So they have a waiver to wait because of this project. And I know, as I said, there's representatives here from Water and Sewer and Planning, Paul Di Giuseppe. If anyone has questions,
Okay, looks like we have some questions. Bill, you have your hand up?
Yes. So, 47 Elm Street, that is Reed and Barton, correct?
Yes.
So we're saying that in this budget, $1.3 million to $1.8 million would be billed to them.
Correct.
But if they walk, we're going to start, how can I put this? We're going to be the first step in the process. So we, as a town, as a street, as a community, we're going to commit and, shovel in the ground and blah, blah, blah. And so we're going to be, putting in a new water main, and we're going to be putting in, the sewer pipes. And so we're going to get $3.5 million from a grant to fund part of it. We're gonna, 2 to 2.4 million water rates and whatnot. And then we're gonna charge the other residents or properties whatever fee. But that still leaves a gaping hole of $1.3 million to $1.8 million, correct?
Correct. That's the assessment on 47 Elm Street.
So if they walk that, and again, shovels in the ground and everything, the bills are coming in. If they decide, this was a nice idea, but we're not going to do it, and they walk, this now becomes a town bill, or does it become back to the residents on this street? I guess is my first question.
Okay. It would be a town liability, not the residents on that street. And
okay.
The town, if the town starts paying the note before the developer comes on board, we would put a lien on the property for any portion of that we pay.
So, silly me, I don't negotiate for a living. But is there a way to say to whomever, hey, you're looking for us as a town, as a community, to pony up $7 million, $7.5 million, whatever. Give us a good faith deposit of $1 million, non-refundable.
In a perfect world, that would be nice. Yep.
In a perfect world, I shouldn't need to pay for this if they walk. So, if they really want this project, we shouldn't be fooled in thinking that, they wouldn't put up something.
Right. I think we don't look at it as they are the only developer out there in the world. I think we look at it as right now that they're the potential developer, but if they walk, there's still other developers out there. There's a shortage of housing in Massachusetts. Someone is going to step up, and yeah, someone is going to step up, I'm sure, eventually, if they walk. And if you have the infrastructure there, it obviously makes it a more desirable location.
And if it's that desirable, they'd purchase the property to then sell it to the next guy and make a profit. So I'm still questioning the sanity of this request. But thank you.
Cody, you're next.
Thanks. So I've got a couple of questions that are all kind of related to that 1.3 to 1.8. So first of all, the debt service on this would be carried by the town, not by Water and Sewer Enterprises. Is that right?
Yes.
How much? What's the term of the loan?
Construction. I don't know if the engineer can speak on that, but it can be anywhere from 20 to 30 years.
Okay, so what's and the debt service that the town would be paying on this until the developer comes in and assumes whatever lien is placed on it, because we're covering their payments on the assessment to their property. What is the annual debt service that we would have to be picking up that is taking funds away from other annual operating budgets?
Steve, I don't know if you've worked on that yet.
And it doesn't have to be an exact number, just a ballpark. Like 1.3 million is
Yeah, I
300,000 a year. I don't know what it is, but you know.
So we ran, so I can plug in some numbers here. So if the town paid the whole 2.5 million, it would be, the first year would be 250,000 and decline from there. So if I change that number, so if you're saying if it were the 1.5 million, let's say. And the first year would be 150,000, and it would.
First year is going to be 10% of the overall debt, and it declines over time as it increases. Okay. I mean it's not great, but if we did that and then the developer comes in and then the back pay for the amount, they pay off the rest of the loan, right? Like they would come in and pay the assessment, the lien that's been placed against, and however much we've covered from that property then gets turned back as free cash. Like, how does that work? So let's say it takes 2 years. Let's say it's $1.5 million, easy numbers. Takes 2 years. We've covered $300,000. They come in, they tear down the deal. They erect a building there, condo, commercial, and residential, and they pay off the lien that's placed against that. Where does the $300 that we paid on that debt service, does that come back to the town as free cash? What happens to that?
So if they paid, if we had already paid towards the debt service, I would assume that anything that we receive, and I'll wait to the town accountant to weigh in, anything that we receive would go towards paying off the debt.
So the debt is more than just the 1.3 to 1.8. That's just the assessment to the Reed and Barton property.
No,
the total debt is 2.2 million, 3.8 to 4.9 is the total debt.
But the debt is all, if Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, the debt is all covered with these assessments. So if we pay it off, or if we're paying it off, any payment they make would then go into the free cash. Eventually, it'll go into the general fund as free cash. Any reimbursement we get from them.
Okay, but in the meantime, if we have to cover their debt service, that would be an annual, like that would have to go into the operating budget, that we would have to pay the long-term debt service for that, and it would have to increase by 150,000, or 130,000, 180,000, or whatever the 10% per year would be.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, James.
so if we are going to be setting up a betterment account, the funds that go into the betterment when people pay them is not combined with the general fund. We set up a separate fund for that. There could be a way that we could place the funds from the developer into that betterment account to be used to pay future debt payments. That would be one way to go around it. The other way would be if it goes into free cash, we just have to keep in mind that we need to amortize that amount over the life of the loan so that we can every year take out a portion of that to fund it. It doesn't affect the future budgets.
So I'll withdraw the free cash thing. I thought that they would, when they came in, they were paying off the balance to the full amount. But if we're placing a lien on their property, does that accrue interest? Does the lien against the property accrue interest? So if we pay $300,000, they're going to owe us $330,000.
Yes, it would accumulate interest. Yep.
Jack, you have a question? Oh, sorry, you're not done? Sorry.
The last thing was just on the Board of Health. Obviously, we are short-staffed with the budget we have. If you're basically saying, listen, the Board of Health is understaffed and they're not necessarily going to be able to come out and tell you have to tie in and enforce it, is there any penalty or assessments on top of, like if the Board of Health did come out after 7 years, and let's say it wasn't a Title V failure, it was just someone knocked on the door and said, why aren't you tied in? It's been 7 years. Is there any financial consideration or any type of penalties placed against a property that has not tied in within the 7-year time frame?
I don't know it. I'll check. I don't think there is, but I know anyone on the water and sewer may have experience with that in the past, but and be able to answer that. But I don't believe there is.
To me, there's just a big difference between turning a blind eye and turning a blind eye while you're putting a lien against their house because they're not complying.
Zach?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to go over the same stuff we talked about last week. Everybody knows where I stand on this project already, but I do have a couple questions. Number one, how are we figuring? And every time we've dug in this area, we've had a major issue with ledge. So how has that been assessed, and by who? That's my first question.
Yeah, so there has been additional soil testing, borings done in the area above and beyond what was done before. More money was spent up front to better define the profile of any of what's below ground, specifically the rock. So,
okay, so
we spent more money up front. We spent more money up front to better define the profile.
Okay. My second question is about the site. Maybe Mike knows this. As it stands today, what is the assessment on contamination? Is the groundwater contaminated? I know they've done a partial cleanup. It obviously looks like a disaster. But what is the level of I'm just trying to, a risk assessment. I mean, could this be so contaminated that nobody would touch it no matter what you do? And then, we have this waste site there on top of another couple $1 million.
So I know there's been a phase 1 and a phase 2 assessment done. And the only area, obviously, that they have not been able to do a great deal testing on is under the building itself. But around the building, they've done groundwater wells, and it has not obviously scared off the developer from what they have heard. So, if it was bad, they would have walked away, but they have not. So, obviously, it's nothing that they haven't dealt with before on a site like that.
So what is the point of no return for the developer when he's locked in and he owns it? Where is that point? If he takes it over, knocks down the building, finds all kinds of nightmares there because they're not, we're done, we're walking away. What point does he own it? Does he become liable for the site? Or are we waiving all his liability? Yeah.
Yeah, we're not. I think that's one of the issues where right now the developer has been going to DEP to get a covenant not to sue. So if they do start work on the site and they back out, they don't want to be held as the responsible party.
So they're fully protected even from this $2 million.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Cody, do you have another question?
Yeah, thanks. Two questions kind of related. To Zach's first point, when they file all of their building permits and all of that stuff, presumably there would be some sort of surety bond placed as a backstop to guarantee that at the very least they can't leave a pile of rubble there, right? So their first step is to knock the building down before they assess and, you know, put a new foundation and all that stuff. Let's say they knock the building down, they find something that kills the deal for them. There's going to be a backstop there from a surety, right? That requires them to, at the very least, clean the site and leave it in a clean condition and not worse than what it currently is.
That would be taken care of when they go to the planning board. They'd require a bond.
Okay. And then I don't know how far down the road and how close to the vest they're playing this, but do you have a sense of the return on investment for this? That if, you know, I know that the assessments and connection fees in Norton are a lot higher than surrounding areas. That 1.3 to 1.8, if they're putting a lien on top of it, on top of, you know, brownfield development's not cheap to begin with. Is there, you know, similar lines of thought here, like their walk away number? Is there sufficient return on investment here that this 1.3 to 1.8 is not going to chase them off, or anybody else?
Yep. I'll let Paul talk on that if he can. I will say that they were on a meeting with us, and all these numbers were presented to them, so they are aware of this.
Right, and we don't know. They didn't share, you know, their numbers with us, but we know that they need to spend. They're looking at determining whether they need to spend additional funds to do another round of assessment work to determine the cost for them to remediate it. But we should also remember they're not buying this property. They're going through the bankruptcy courts. So their costs are really legal fees, but there's not a sales transaction. So, you know, that works in our favor. And if we're able to supplement that with the, you know, the sewer proposal here, that continues to move the needle, you know, I think toward their favor to be able, you know, to help them move forward. I think the big question is what's the total cost of the remediation that's remaining? The first two phases that were done, you know, it showed some level of contamination, but as our licensed site professional has said, it wasn't that bad. it's what they were expecting to see. We don't know what's directly under the buildings, but, we don't have any information that would tell us at this point that it should be anything different than what we have found, but they still need to test it. So I think that's going to be the big crossover point for them, is determining what the cost of the remediation of the soil is.
Thank you, Paul, and welcome back. You have been missed.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Joe.
I just want to double check one thing. Cody, I've heard you mention a couple times that the betterment fees here are significantly higher than other communities. I'm not sure that's true. Do we have any actual comparisons that we can rely on for that?
I know these fees are less than what was charged on West Main Street. And I just know from projects down the Cape where sewer came into Falmouth and people were paying in the $40,000 range for betterments, because where the project was, there was a lot of ledge and it was an expensive site. So betterments in other areas have been, these are 8,600 to 12,000 is not a high amount based on, I know what I've seen down there.
Thank you.
Just in response, Joe, my own personal, I've reached out and done research and found out what now I was just looking at residential, but compared the next closest town to our fees was Foxborough. Based on the assessments, Mansfield was drastically less, Easton was drastically less. And having spoken to a couple of business people in town that do sewer connections and one of them for Bernie and Phil's on West Main over here. When they're working in other towns, and they're like, the connection fees here are.
So, Madam Chair, I think we're confusing the connection fees. I'm not talking about the connection fees. I'm talking about betterments. And there are no connection fees on this project, but I do agree with you. The connection fees are significant.
I apologize if this was mentioned or discussed at Wednesday's meeting last week that I missed. There was going to be a public hearing. I think it was supposed to be last Wednesday, correct? On this project for the residents in that area?
Yep, there was one last week and there's another one this week, Steve?
Next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
So yes, there was one this past Wednesday. So we scheduled two to give people two different opportunities to come out. So
what has the response been from the residents in the area?
I mean, the biggest, they have concerns about the costs. That's the biggest issue that they have, is the having to pay the betterment and then having to connect and pay someone to connect them.
And you said it's about 70 residential properties that would be affected, is that correct?
It's about 50, and it equates to like 64 what we call EDUs, equivalent dwelling units, because some of them are multifamily homes. But it's about 50 properties.
Anyone else have questions, concerns about this article? Okay. Hearing nothing. Do we want to vote on this evening based on all the information we have in front of us?
Madam Chair? Madam Chair?
Yes, Joe. Sorry, I said yes, Joe. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I missed you. You're very quiet this evening.
sleepy is all.
I make a motion that we recommend Article 10 on the annual town meeting warrant.
Second?
Article 10. We'll take the vote. Kevin? Kevin? Okay, not hearing Kevin. Steve?
No.
Tracy?
No.
Steve?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Bill?
No.
Paul?
Yes.
Cody?
Yes.
Zach?
No.
Bonnie? Bonnie has left, sorry. I am a no. Okay, good. Add, hold on, give me 2 seconds. Let me just make sure. Okay, 4 no, 5 no, 4 yes. Not recommended by Finance Committee.
Do you want to continue with articles or do you want to hold them to Wednesday?
I say we continue. We do have sorry, I guess it's just me. Everyone else think we should continue. We have a speed limit article.
Yeah.
Street acceptance articles. Everyone good with moving forward?
Madam Chair?
Zach?
I just have a question I did attend the select board meeting last week and they want us to get through 2 more budgets before the town meeting. What does that timeline look like? And to be able to get through, that 2 additional budgets when this one's taken, as long as it's taken.
That is a great question. From what I see is that we really only have Wednesday's meeting. Then on Monday, the warrant has to be posted with our recommendations. Am I right with that, Mike?
Yes.
So we wouldn't even be able to do a meeting on Monday because it would have to be posted by end of business day on Monday. So we really just have Wednesday.
How many more things do we have to finish? How many more articles do we have to get through? We have to vote the school budget. We didn't vote the school budget. And can we finish this tonight and just spend Wednesday on the other 2 budgets?
That's what I was thinking in my head. We still have to vote on the 1% school budget. We also have 1, 2, 3 more articles for the annual town meeting.
Right. So the Article 13 is the establishment of a townwide speed limit. And I know we've talked about this before. It was previously presented at town meeting, and the Traffic Safety Committee asked that it be brought back again. Ironically, someone on the Traffic Safety Committee who's now in support was someone who spoke against it at the previous town meeting. I think was one of the reasons that it didn't move forward. And what this would allow the town to do is, in congested areas, lower the speed limit to 25 miles an hour. And as I said before, be similar. I know, like Randolph, right next to me here, when you drive into Randolph, there's signs that say speed limit 25 miles an hour townwide unless otherwise posted.
Bill, you have a question.
Yeah, so reading through the information today, only one question kind of popped in my head. On like 123 and 140, where it's a state highway here, and then there's a sign, state highway ends, and then state highway begins a little further down. Is that section where it's no longer going to be a state highway, is that eligible for this?
So East Main Street is not state highway. West Main Street is state highway. and 140 is state highway. So if we want a speed limit reduced on any 140 or West Main Street, we'd have to petition the state.
But we'd be able
The town can't do it.
we'd be able on East Main
Yes,
to have it at 25, but then once you cross over, it can go up to whatever it is.
right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. We would have to petition the state if we wanted it lowered on there.
Cody, sorry, I think Cody's hand was up first.
Madam Chair, thank you. Two things. One, we have no traffic enforcement officer. This is completely pointless to make any difference. People are going to drive fast. We have no way to stop them from driving fast because we don't have the officer on staff to pull them over and issue tickets. So, pointless. And secondly, how much are we going to spend on signs to put up? It's a stupid article. It's lost before. I will not support it. I'm done with this conversation.
I was gonna say the same thing about the signs. Zach, wait, Paul, were you trying to speak or was that Zach?
No, I was just gonna make a comment that I'd have to ride my brake around town to keep it going that slow.
I know. Zach,
I spoke to this article when it came up before at town meeting, and I challenged everybody at town meeting to go home that night, if you want to go watch the tape, and drive with their spouse 25 miles an hour and let me know if they didn't get a divorce by the time they got home. So this is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous article that cannot be enforced, even if you had 4 traffic officers. I'm not sure why it's back again, but it's a waste of the town meeting's time to even move it, in my view.
ooh, but what
Thank
could
you.
we make on speeding tickets?
The state gets the money. Unfortunately, the town does not.
Oh, we don't get any of that?
Nope.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Bill.
what does the police chief think of this?
Chief Clark, are you still on with us? I think he sent a letter.
I am. I wouldn't have missed this meeting for the world. Now that I know I can call Mike Units Dr. Units, we got through this today. Like we're in good shape. Yeah. So I mean, we brought this up a couple years ago. It was specifically because of the issues going on in front of Home Foods. To my frustration, the people that were complaining about the speeding there actually voted against the article. The issue hasn't gone away. I will say, what Cody brings up is not necessarily true. Our officers do traffic enforcement. We don't have a dedicated person. That would be something that would be great if we did have. But, every officer on patrol, it is part of their duties to do traffic enforcement. It's not going away. Wheaton College went before the Traffic Safety Committee. They want to reduce the speed limit in front of Wheaton College. That's primarily, I think, why this is before us. There's another resident on North Worcester Street that wants to reduce the speed limit there. It's just a tool. It's just a tool. That's all it is. When I looked online to see who else has it, there's really no other communities right around us. I think the closest community is West Bridgewater. I know the town manager mentioned Randolph as well. There's other communities that are more near a urban setting like Belmont and in those type of cities. But it's just a tool. Traffic safety is one of the biggest complaints we get. I always say that we have a triangle of what we do. It's calls for service, community policing, and traffic safety. So that's kind of where we are.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Chief Clark, Mike was saying that the default is that all streets be 25 unless posted higher. Is that your understanding of this article as well, or would you be specifically just posting 2 or 3 spots like in front of Wheaton at 25? And who has the right to decide that? Is that your call, or is it the Board of Selectmen, or who makes the call?
It would be the select board, and it's strictly thickly settled. It's not like
we can't go to a posted 45 mile an hour or 40 mile an hour zone and change it to 25. It'd be those that are areas that would be considered 30, we could change to 25.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any further discussion on Article 13?
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Cody.
I don't know if Chief Simmons is still on or not. I spoke with him a couple years ago, and I think he gave me a number. I don't know exactly how much, but the number 419 or 420 is in my mind of the amount of roads that have to be serviced in Norton by police and fire. It was an absurd number. Like it's a ridiculous number for the size of the population of the town, just because of the size of the footprint. If that's the case, like again, unenforceable. Like it doesn't. The posted speed limits. I see the truck parked out with the trailer where it's gunning everybody, and the speed limit's 30, and everybody's going 45 anyways. Like it doesn't do any good. You drop it from 30 to 25, they're still going to go 45. I mean, unless you're enforcing it, unless you have somebody there on a regular basis, which we can't staff the positions fully now, and we're already talking about cutting. Like it just doesn't make any sense that we're talking about this, and again, it's going to cost money, whether it's a thickly settled sign or a 25 or whatever other posting notice signs that have to go up and be maintained. Like it's an unnecessary expense, and it's not something you could enforce it right now because most of the roads are already 30 or 35, and people are driving too fast on them. You can enforce it now. You don't have to make it 25. People are not going to obey it just because you post it at the center of town that everywhere is supposed to be 25.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Steve.
I make a motion to approve Article 13.
Second?
Okay, motion and a second. I will take the vote. Kevin is still not here. Steve?
No.
Tracy?
No.
Sandy?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Bill?
I won't promise to do 25, but I'm sadly going to vote yes.
Paul?
Yes. Ditto.
Cody?
No.
Zach?
And I wish I could do 25 past Wheaton College, but I'm usually stuck in traffic. So it's a no for me.
I am a no. Five no, 4 yes. We do not recommend. Article 13.
Article 14 is a street acceptance put forward. The planning board did review this and recommend it. I'll share the plan just to. I know it's probably tough to see, but this is Leonard Street North. Down at the bottom left is Leonard Street, and then there's two sheets to this plan. The road heads up and ends in a cul-de-sac. Yale Appliance is on the road, and one other building that is not occupied yet. This is the end of the road up here with the cul-de-sac. And if Paul is still on, he can let you know about the planning board's recommendation.
Seeing Paul, Mike, are you?
He's not there anymore. Okay, well, let me, the planning board unanimously endorse Leonard Street North as an accepted way.
I guess my first question would be, is there a cost to this for us, for the town?
There's no upfront costs, obviously, with any accepted roadway. It would be, our responsibility for plowing and maintaining the roadway. It would go on to our list for a Chapter 90 reimbursement, as a public way. But, as a public way, it is our responsibility once the town accepts it.
What is going on this street? Where are they building on it?
It's industrial. So the Yale Appliance headquarters is on there right now, and there's another building that is just about complete that is not occupied yet.
Is there a plan for occupancy of the building, or they're hoping to have a
They're hoping.
business?
Yeah, they're hoping to get another business in there. It's another commercial building. So,
Madam Chair. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I think Bill had his hand up, maybe.
Yeah.
So, stupid question, I think I know the answer, but, if we were to say no, that would just mean that as potholes develop or there's snow or whatever, some version of those tenants would have to take care of that.
yes.
And in the long run, it would probably drive the tenants out.
Yeah, if it wasn't maintained, yep.
Thank you.
Has the highway department weighed in about this? Or are they feeling like it's gonna be a major impact to them?
Highway did review everything, and Water and Sewer did too, and they were both satisfied with accepting it.
Cody, you had something?
Two things. This is like the essentially the drive that comes north right after Home Depot to where Yale is. It's gonna be a new spur off of Leonard.
Correct.
And the funding or the build out of it, is that being funded by the tenants that are building that out now?
Everything is paid for by the contractor. We don't develop the road. We don't accept it. We didn't accept it until everything was done up to the standards of the highway department and Water and Sewer. And so it all has been reviewed by Water and Sewer and Highway, and they gave the planning board the okay to accept the road.
Okay, so it's built. I noticed that Yale is open now. They did an event. I don't know if they were still doing it, but an appliance sale last weekend. So they built the road. Right now it's a private way, and they're asking us as a town to assume control of it and then have to maintain and upkeep it.
Correct.
Okay.
Bill, you had another question?
And kind of a follow-up to my first one, if we were to say no, then this could have a negative impact on how police and fire could respond if it's not plowed or if the road isn't maintained, if there were ever emergencies in that section, correct?
It could be an issue if it wasn't maintained properly, yes.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, Zach.
Mike, is there street lighting on this street, and are we assuming that as well?
We would assume the street lighting, yes.
Mike, with that said, I remember a story a couple of years ago on streetlights of one of these similar streets that we accepted that didn't fit the current criteria, and we had to pay additional expenses to get that up to speed. Is there a situation like that with this road? Has that been confirmed?
It has. we made sure this time the planning board was diligent about that, making sure that it was up to our current standards.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair,
Article 14, yes, Joe.
not a question, just more of a comment. The town voted to convert this to industrial zoning. The developer has built it out. I understand the people asking questions, but there's really no way in my mind that we can say no to this article. Like, if we do not accept this street as an official street, it's going to fall into disrepair. The tenants are going to leave, and we're going to have a bunch of streets with empty warehouses on them. It doesn't make any sense to me to say no.
I agree with you, Joe. All right.
I don't think it's a good step. That has to due diligence before we vote on it, so.
Sure, but at the end of the day, I can't see a situation where we could realistically say no. With that, Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we accept or recommend Article 14 of the annual town meeting warrant.
Second.
Steve,
Yes.
Tracy? Sorry, Tracy, I didn't hear you.
Yes.
Okay. Sandy?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Cody?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
I too am a yes. We agree on something tonight, all right? 9 yes for Article 14.
All right. Next is Article 18. And as you know, this was a petitioned article. In this article, as opposed to the other one, the reason you don't have a recommendation from the planning board on this is that this is an article requesting that our bylaws be changed. And they want to, she wants to insert the petitioner into the town's general bylaw, a homeowner's privacy bylaw. And this would control cameras and where cameras could be and face. Obviously, just one of my concerns is not everyone, but a good deal of people have cameras on their houses now. They have Ring cameras. I understand some of the issues with this, but where it says that the cameras can't be pointing at another property, I mean, that's pretty tough to do with a Ring camera on the front of your house.
Yeah, my question when I was thinking about this one the other day, what would it cost us, like, for additional resources to enforce this?
Right. It would be very, very hard to enforce. Town council hasn't really weighed in. I don't know whether that's because it's a petition article. But
Bill?
Yeah, how difficult would it be to have this petitioner amended to exclude a Ring camera? Because what they appear to be going through is way different than someone's Ring camera that just happens to come across into your property. This is someone deliberately pointing cameras above a fence, which, if there's a fence involved, a Ring camera stops at the fence. So, I actually feel sorry for this petitioner, because this is above and beyond harassment, essentially. So, this article, if you insert excluding Ring cameras, I'm not sure what a negative would be to it.
I'll suggest that to her to look at possible amendments, and I'll talk to, the petitioner would have to make that amendment. We can't. And I'll talk to town council on any amendment that we receive.
Zach.
Yes, this petitioner spoke at the select board meeting Thursday night, and that's exactly what Bill said is exactly what's going on. People putting cameras over the fences. Yeah, I think, it's legitimate. We all have Ring cameras, but it should be, maybe the wording should be cameras that aren't directly attached to your house, or something to that. If you're putting them on a pole at the end of your fence, peek into your neighbor's windows, that's just harassment. So I can see where this petitioner is, to Bill's point, and that's basically what she was saying at the select board meeting on Thursday night. So I'm not sure if there's time even allowed for her to amend this petition prior to town meeting, but she's got a legitimate gripe.
Yeah, Mike, could she amend this and then when, if it comes to it, we have to meet briefly prior to town meeting to give our recommendation? Or would we not recommend this now potentially and then she move it on the floor at town meeting with an amendment?
Yeah, we did tell her at the select board meeting to be prepared for that. That if it's not recommended, that she would have to move the article.
But we could potentially vote on this
Not,
after if she chooses to make an amendment. We could.
Yeah.
Or we could vote on it tonight and then possibly reconsider it with the amendment.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, Cody, I think you were next.
Yeah, I don't know if Chief Clark is still on or not, but she makes reference here to the Massachusetts nuisance laws. It's not directly linked back to whatever laws she's referencing, but presumably there are laws on the books at the state level, and if she has a legitimate gripe here, why does the town, pretty much, we adopt Mass General Law under the charter, so we follow Mass General Law, and if there are nuisance laws on the books, then an individual already has recourse under the existing laws. I don't necessarily see the need to add anything to our bylaws if it's already adopted under Mass General Law. And I don't know if she had an attorney draft this up or what, but the language, I just see it as being full of loopholes and like unintended consequences. Ring cameras come to mind, but Ring makes more than doorbell cameras. They make security cameras that can be mounted at the top, looking down and surveying the rest of your property. Somebody's got, they sit on half an acre and they're putting a camera pointed out at their RV and it's shooting over the fence when the RV's not there. Like all of these things, the unintended consequences here, I would just defer back to whatever the Mass General Law is. And if those nuisance laws already exist, then she should have recourse under those laws without us having to change our bylaws and introduce variables and unknowns that it's going to just rack up legal bills and zoning board issues and planning board issues. I don't see the need that this is addressing something that there shouldn't already be recourse for her to follow through on.
Yeah, I don't think Chief Clark is on anymore, Cody. I don't think so. Okay. Joe, your hand is up.
Yeah, so I hear what Cody's saying, and if the Mass General laws do cover it, then yeah, I can see what you're saying. But in regard to what we were talking about earlier, I feel like the petitioner has attempted to put language in here that would exclude Ring doorbell cameras. I mean, no one's installing a Ring doorbell camera above a privacy fence. And you know, the wording does say with intent to harass, annoy, or threaten. You know, you don't put a Ring doorbell camera up to harass your neighbor. That's for your own personal security. So I think the wording of this could be improved, but I feel like some of those comments are handled by the wording of the article.
Bill?
Yeah, kind of to that point. I guess I'd just add, if the current Mass General law was adequate, I don't think this would be coming up. This sounds like it's been a long-term neighborly issue that, you know, seems to somehow be skirting under any mass law that may possibly cover it. I'm going to guess it doesn't cover it to the extent that the quote unquote harassment isn't ending. Hence why I think it's here. But yeah, I think the wording, you know, as we previously said, I think it needs to be amended somewhat.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Zach.
I think, and Mike, correct me, you were there. I think that's what she indicated on Thursday night, was there was really no coverage for her under Mass existing law. Isn't that what she stated?
She did.
So, I mean, she's already explored that option. Again, I don't know personally what to do with this. I see where she's coming from. Can she amend this before the town meeting? Can we push it off till, I don't know, Monday? I don't know, but she has a legitimate point.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, Sandy.
So my understanding with a petition article is that it can't be amended prior. It has to just be amended on the town meeting floor. Is that correct, Mike?
Yes, and it has to be by the petitioner.
Right. Yeah, I think the part that's tricky, and it's, you know, I appreciate anyone who puts forward a petition article, but where it's not reviewed by town council, I feel like that's where it gets a little tricky for me. Has anybody talked about, you know, having her go through the select board and have the select board put this on a future town meeting? I mean, I know that doesn't help her now, but, and that way it does get reviewed by town council and any language cleaned up that maybe would be ambiguous.
That's a good suggestion, because right now I look at it and I can just imagine the legal bills when you're trying to argue intent. You know, I mean, it's just going to go on forever.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Cody.
The intent thing is huge here. Like proving that you're trying to harass or annoy somebody like it. And then on the other side of it, if the town steps in, let's say we pass this and this town steps in and somebody says, oh, somebody put up a camera and they're trying to annoy and harass me, and so I'm protected under this. Who's going to enforce it? You send the cops out there and the police now say, oh, you have to take that down, or they physically take it down. Now you get a lawsuit from the homeowner saying you came onto my property and removed it without, like, that's what I'm talking about with unintended consequences here. Like, no one of legal qualifications has signed off on this and said, yes, this is good, this will cause you no issues. And I'm not comfortable saying, let's just willy-nilly change our bylaws, we'll throw it in there, we'll figure it out. It's going to cost us way more and cause all sorts of issues that, you know, I understand that there's an issue here. It sucks. I feel for her, but we can't just use like the first draft of something, change everything, and then sort it out down the road. We've got to make sure that it's buttoned up before we make a recommendation to change our bylaws.
I think Sandy's idea was a great idea. I agree.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Bill, you had something?
Is there any difference, no action versus not supported? I kind of would prefer no action, which means we want further study versus saying no, because then that kind of gives the idea that we're totally against it.
Against the petitioner, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if we say no action, we're not moving the article on the floor at town meeting, and then she would then either not move it because maybe she'll decide to take Sandy's suggestion, or she will amend it and move it herself. I agree with the no action.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Joe.
I agree with no action if we can do. Typically, we use no action when something isn't needed. Can we recommend no action for this? Do we have a precedent for that?
I feel like we've done that before. Cody?
I just, to me, I see no action as this is not needed and we're not taking a stance on it. We're not going to move it. Somebody else wants to move it. We can have a discussion about it. But in this case, I think it sounds like pretty much everybody's on the same page here that we would not recommend this because there is a better route, and the better route is recommending that you go to select board. They figure out what the proper way to word this is, get town council to weigh in on it, and get the final draft where it's presentable, and it can come back at fall town meeting, and we can address the conversation there. But I feel like no action kind of leaves it open for her to move it, and then we end up in, talking about making amendments up from the floor and trying to change it and on the fly. And I'd rather have, thoughtful consideration and time put into this as opposed to trying to figure it out from the floor.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, because I've only been chair once at a town meeting, but I think that in either instance, no action or not recommending, the moderator will say Article 18, I just won't say anything, whether it be no action or not recommended, right? It doesn't really
Correct.
matter, really just what is written on the warrant. But either way, I'm just not saying anything.
That's your opportunity to have a sip of coffee.
Yeah.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Joe.
I make a motion that we recommend no action for Article 18 of the annual town meeting warrant.
Second?
Okay, motion and a second, no action on Article 18. Steve?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Cody?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
I too am a yes. That is 9 yes, 4 no, voting no action for Article 18.
9-0.
Exactly.
Okay. And that's two things we agree on tonight.
And now we just have the 1% school budget, everyone. Do we want to bring that up, Mike?
Yeah.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Joe?
I make a motion that we accept budget 300 school department, line 510 personnel services in the amount of $28,745,054, and line 570 charges and expenditures in the amount of $6,308,453 for a total of $35,053,507.
Second?
Motion and a second.
I didn't give
Okay.
people an opportunity for discussion. But
Yeah, does
we
anyone
can
want
discuss it now.
Does anyone want to discuss or have any questions, comments? Okay. All right. I will go to the vote. Steve?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Cody,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
I too am a yes. 9 yes for the school department budget.
All right. Do we vote police and fire? I thought those two-
We did
Yeah.
vote on those, Steve. I think that, we were just thinking about possibly we'd reconsider it depending on what the chief said about the ambulance funds.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Cody.
I think we were also on the town budget, we were waiting to see, the layoffs and whether or not we needed to reconsider, the budget line items. We had a discussion about what we were carrying for unemployment, but we determined that it's gonna, like benefits versus unemployment, it's gonna kind of wash and sort out, so
Right.
some kind of got left on.
Is anyone wanting to reconsider any of the 1% line items? Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Zach.
I just say for the record that, I just think closing police and fire stations, same thing I've said before. I just think that's no words.
I hear you, Zach. I feel the same. I do. All of this is really difficult to swallow right now. So we'll leave it in the hands of town meeting, I suppose. And we'll do other budgets on Wednesday. Yes, Cody.
Anecdotally, I've heard an account from a lifelong member in town saying they've closed the police station before, they've closed Chartley before, we survived it. That's, whether we agree with it or not, that's the state we find ourselves in. We can't afford to keep it open. We can't afford to keep it open. We got to make some tough decisions, and unfortunately, those are the decisions that have to be made. When we funded it with a grant to keep Chartley open. Grant money runs out unless we continue to fund it. That's what happens.
All right. That is it for this evening. It is 10:23, way past my bedtime. I suspect Wednesday may be a long one as well. I see that there will be 2 absences mentioned in the comments for Wednesday. Anyone else not able to make it Wednesday?
Am I one of those?
You're also, yeah, you mentioned that. That's right. No, now there's 3.
Yeah,
So
I can be
that
there for
brings
the
us
first
down to 7.
first 55
right.
minutes.
Okay. All right.
Madam Chair,
That leaves us to 7. Yeah, Cody.
if we're going through the 4 million and 6.5 million budgets, I would just ask Mike if it's possible to do a side by side so that we can easily reference which ones have no changes or minimal changes, just so that we can easily go through and clear those off. Department by department, because most of them aren't going to need to do it. I hate to admit this, but I'm kind of a spreadsheet nerd, and I've already done my own because I wanted to know what it looked like. But when we go through, it'll be a lot easier to say Department 210 no change, Department 500 no change, whatever those are. For the most part, they're going to be no changes, and it's just going to be the big departments where we're looking at major changes. So you can do that. That'll hopefully speed things along a lot.
All right. Okay, so hopefully we have quorum on Wednesday. I think we'll have 7 unless I hear otherwise from any other members. If anyone has anything else, I will entertain a motion. Yeah.
Paul, are we meeting on the following Monday?
So I don't think so.
Are we
because it would be after we've posted the warrant with our recommendations. So if we haven't gotten through everything, I guess we would have to, and then, you know, just make my job harder at town meeting, I suppose. Not having a recommendation in there, but
All right, I'll pay attention to that, then I might be able to, on vacation, join in that meeting if there is a need, so,
okay.
all right, thanks.
Okay.
Madam
Try
Chair?
a motion to adjourn, and Joe.
So moved.
Second,
Yes.
Steve, yes, okay, Tracy,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Cody,
Yes.
yes.
yes. We are adjourned, everyone. I will see most of you Wednesday. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Good night.
Mike.